What's poppin', gamers? Today, we are beating the allegations. Today, we are playing a Western video game. A
No.
PC... a PC game, no less. It's Deus Ex.
Your appointment to FEMA should be finalized within the week. I've already discussed the matter with the senator.
I take it he was agreeable?
He didn't really have a choice.
Has he been infected?
Oh yes, most certainly.
This plague, the rioting is intensifying to the point where we may not be able to contain it.
Why contain it? Let the bodies pile up in the streets. In the end, they'll beg us to save them.
The secondary unit should be online soon. Necessary, the primary will be terminated.
We've had to endure much, you and I, but soon there will be order again. A new age. Aquinas spoke of the mythical city on the hill. Soon, that city will be a reality, and we will be crowned its kings. Better than kings. Gods.
You really shouldn't say we're beating the allegations so close to the Epstein documents.
Yeah, so the image that I have of Deus Ex, I should clarify, I've only dabbled with the opening of the game. I haven't seriously attempted to play it, but I knew, okay, this is a thing I have to eventually get to. I always have this image of it as the proto-immersive sim, and immersive sim is kind of a weird, I'm gonna do big air quotes with my hands, genre, or even descriptor for a game. I remember when in 2017, the Prey reboot was coming out, and a lot of outlets sort of gravitated toward describing it, okay, this is an immersive sim. I remember just as many people saying, what the fuck is immersive sim? That doesn't sound like a real thing. So I'm kind of curious, like maybe Kranku, as like someone who I think plays a lot of PC games and is a big fan of Deus Ex. Do you have thoughts on immersive sim as a category, as a descriptor? What does it mean to you? What do you think about sort of the evolution of it?
Yeah, immersive sim's really easy to define, actually. It's just an FPS where you can turn the light switches on and off in rooms and stuff. Like, it is defined like by just sort of having that level of interaction and being able to have like a bit more interaction than just like shooting demons, I guess. I think it's a sort of like genre busting idea where everything's like, it's a little bit of an adventure, but it's also a little bit of an FPS and a little bit of an RPG, but it's got a linear narrative and open levels, and you can pick things up and you can talk to people and you can use stats, and it's like a sort of like everything. Or maybe you could put implants in yourself. So, I mean, like, it's one of those things, like, you sort of know it when you see it, but it's hard to sort of pin down exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember when Deus Ex Human Revolution, so the third game in the series, released, I think in 2011, right? There was a lot of talk about how that game approaches this idea with sort of a three-pronged, like system where, okay, you can either be stealthy, be actiony, or be a conversationalist. And yeah, their interpretation of immersive sim was, okay, we have fleshed out systems for in like multiple categories basically that let you define the kind of character that you want to play. But I guess if you look at recent examples of immersive sims, or even if you maybe got away from the idea of immersive sim necessarily as a genre and more like a set of design principles.
I mean, bringing up Human Revolution is quite interesting because, like, it was sort of made in like a really, like, the glut of immersive sims. Like, there wasn't actually a whole lot of immersive sims coming out at that time.
Yeah, it's
more or less had a resurgence like recently.
Totally. And the vibe I get from a lot of those recent games, maybe not specifically Human Revolution. I only played for like 5 hours maybe. Is that they look at this immersive sim idea on maybe a more foundational systemic mechanical level, how do we structure our mechanics and how do they interact? Alan, as a fan of the Japanese video game, and like maybe recent Japanese games, I'm not gonna say any names, but like maybe you can get into that. Do you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, so we're describing this as like the proto MSim, which means it's not really the first one. It's kind of like the archetypal one.
Yes.
The real first one obviously came in 2017 with Breath of the Wild. They dropped a second one pretty recently, Tears of the Kingdom. Don't know if y'all have heard of it, kind of underground. So I don't have like a lot of exposure to these like design principles. It feels like they were all happening when I was a fetus and playing Aladdin games on my PC instead. The way they're applied nowadays feels maybe because this legacy is like pretty old now. It feels like everyone is trying to figure out what evoked these emotions back when and then implement them from the ground up. Whereas you listen to like a lot of the teams from around this time talk about it, and they make it sound like it was an accident almost.
Yeah. I think it's like obviously it's you brought up Breath of the Wild a little bit for the memes, but I think it's an interesting case study in the sense that I think depending on where you're coming from with the immersive sim definition, you're gonna look at Breath of the Wild and think like the fact that people call this an immersive sim when it's not first person, it's not a stealth hacking game. You're gonna think it's some hoopla, right? When what is actually meant in this context by immersive sim is that there's more fluid interaction to how this world kind of functions. Like the grass catches fire, the wind propagates the fire, the rain puts out the fire, and again everything sort of reacts, and it raises questions about how they even made this type of game. How did they arrive at a system where things interact so fluidly? I think it's not something we can like capture the full depth of in this podcast. There's a lot of resources on the topic that maybe we could link when the full thing is out. I guess maybe Björn, do you have are you a big fan of immersive sims? Are you sort of interested in the history of the genre and maybe have thoughts on recent developments?
I mean, interested, of course. I haven't played all the early PC classics that you kind of put into this genre.
Same, yeah.
I mainly dabbled in the later games that also released on console, like DEUS EX, Human Revolution. I played on release, and especially the Dishonored games. So I generally like the unforeseen consequences that can occur in the genre, like mainly fucking you over. Like for instance, you can. Is it also an immersive sim, a CRPG like the Divinity games?
I'd say they have like elements of that, yeah.
Yeah, like when the first time you forget you have like an oil barrel in your inventory and you cast a magic, like you have a fire spell cast on you. And it's like, oh, it's no big deal, and then the oil barrel explodes in your inventory and the whole party gets fucked over. Like those elements I really enjoy, like having to deal with the unforeseen consequences of your own actions. I mean, you have kind of imsim elements in games like GTA 3 and onwards in open world games, like the interactivity of your actions and the consequences that you have to deal with, like and also the coming up with silly solutions to problems, like Tears of the Kingdom is like without a doubt my GOTY of 2023. And just the ability to do the most ridiculous shit ever in the game. Like, I think that the first time also I felt the need to play the Baldur's Gate 3 was when I saw the clip online of was it Alex, like the voice actor guy from
Matthew
Critical
Mercer,
Role?
maybe, I think.
Yeah. Where was it him stacking like 40 boxes
Yes.
on top of each other so he could like shoot a teleport arrow onto the castle bridge. It's like that's the shit I love.
I
Oh, yeah,
think
on
the
the-
idea of comedy as a metric to judge a system's like emergence is something I really like a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, actually, unironically, I think that's a good point. I think the first game in that ImSim mold that I must have played, or that I probably have played, must have been Fallout 3. And I think Bethesda's like one of those developers where, again, you wouldn't instantly jump to that ImSim definition until you actually realize, okay, how much of it is very systemically crafted. For example, like every piece of equipment and every item on like one of the NPC characters, for example, those are actually items that you can like, for example, if you kill them, you can strip them of their clothes. That sounds kind of fucked up when I say it like that, but you can strip them of their clothing. Like the items were actually physically part of their inventory. If you put famously, if you put the barrel on the guy's head, he actually, it will actually obstruct his vision because they actually genuinely implemented like a line of sight system, and then that will allow you to like stealth and shit. That's the kind of stuff that, again, if you don't have that frame of mind for categorizing that way, it will probably not occur to you that it sort of has this legacy in these older games. I guess a big point of inspiration for Deus Ex specifically was Ultima Underworld, which director Warren Spector also worked on, and that I think is very RPG coded as well. Maybe Raph, I think you're a big fan of like CRPGs, right? And maybe with the comparison that Björn just made, do you have thoughts on maybe how a lot of those mechanics originate in that genre, and maybe how that reflects on ImSims today, how we discuss them and stuff?
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting topic because I think nowadays we think of ImSims as like first person titles.
Mhm.
But Warren Spector, his idea, his definition of ImSim was just any game that tries to immerse you within a world that's defined by systems and physics and AI, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So for him, the first ImSim was actually Ultima 6, an isometric RPG from 1990, and that game sort of like set the foundation for like Ultima Underworld and System Shock and Thief and like so on and so forth. And also, games like Original Sin 2 and Baldur's Gate 3, which are actually like spiritual successors to Ultima, are also considered ImSims to him. So it's like this long tail of like CRPGs leading to like stealth shooter things.
You think of that, that's actually not a connection I was like super aware of.
Yeah. It's I mean, I jokingly say like Tears of the Kingdom is a CRPG because it has all those weird ass RPG mechanics and different ways of approaching things. Though one thing I find like really interesting is how like our modern interpretation of ImSim is also focused on like multiplicative mechanics of like physics and chemistry and like elemental systems interacting with stuff. Like we think of Prey, we think of like fire and like launching objects across the room and stuff. But Deus Ex doesn't have a lot of that stuff. It's a bit more, a bit smaller, a bit simpler. It's not as like expressive with that kind of stuff, and tries to be more like a traditional dungeon crawler. So it sort of shows the entire genre as like on it's like a gradient almost.
Totally.
Of like how systemic it is. But yeah, I don't know. It's messy. It's like the genres are messy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Alan, go ahead.
We've talked about simulation games, not ImSims, before, particularly when we were talking about Shenmue. And a lot of those devs, in looking into it further, because I'm working on a video about it, also cite Ultima as a inspiration, and so that might be like the common ancestor between these like two interpretations of what a simulation is. I don't have a lot of food for thought there, but it might be something worth looking into.
I just want to touch a little bit on what Raf said about like it's not necessarily first person. I don't know if I agree with that. I think it actually is necessarily first person a little bit. Because like you are right that like Ultima 6 is this isometric perspective game, but it didn't like stay that way. Ultima did become a first person series like RPG, and I think that like from the perspective of well, it would have been Richard Garriott and Warren Spector, but like they thought, yeah, it makes sense that if we want to make a game that sort of feels real, then you have to kind of see yourself through the character's eyes.
Right,
Do you,
right.
thi- do you think that also might have been a consequence of like what they were developing for? Like they were mostly making keyboard and mouse games to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, this was like the early years of DOS, so it was more like a sort of 2.5D representative sort of first person perspective. Because like a lot of people cite things like Thief as like being a immersive sim, and I don't know about that either because when you play Thief, there's you actually don't have that much choice. I mean, it's like there's open levels and you can do a lot of things, but at the end of the day, what you've got to do is sneak somewhere and steal something, and it's not like you have like a huge amount of ways to do things because like combat's very restrictive. Whereas something like Deus Ex is like you can sneak and you can talk and you can just run in there with a rocket launcher if you want. So I don't know, maybe there's a bit more like nuance to what an actual sim is. But I don't know. Maybe I think the first person perspective is necessarily a component of being an immersive sim, or like at least the perspective of a character.
I have a big mess of thoughts on this. I think there's definitely something to like the fluidity of interaction that you have in first person, right? Where I just point at a thing and I know exactly what I'm doing, right? It sort of cuts out a lot of the abstraction that you would have with a third person character. I think, Alan, this kind of goes back to what you were saying about, okay, keyboard and mouse, it sort of makes natural sense there. And I do agree, Kranku, that you could see first person as inherently more immersive, and if that's the goal, then that sort of makes sense, right? But I also agree with Raph that it's messy, right? Because this is maybe a very strange comparison, right? But maybe some of y'all know the series of videos from the Gaming Brit where he basically tries to define what an action game is, right? And he comes up with this definition of they're just action games, quote unquote. And one of his arguments is like, yeah, you wouldn't define a genre by how complex it is in that defined characteristic, right? Like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, All-Star Battle, whatever, is still a fighting game. It's not a character fighting game, or like whatever the fuck you want to call it, right? There's like one more thought I had on that. I guess like it's been kind of a running gag in our circle that I call everything an immersive sim. I've gone on record saying that Halo is an immersive sim because it's like it has this like very intricate sandbox. I've said that Bangai-O Spirits is an immersive sim arcade game, which, yes, I realize is a ridiculous statement. But the thing is, I also know sort of anecdotally that, yeah, I've said that and people sort of got what I meant, right? So I think that, I don't know, I think it speaks to the fact that there is some complexity and some nuance to the definition of it. Pang just hopped on, actually, and he has some thoughts on that, I think.
Yeah, sorry for my mic being shitty when you edit the sliders. Yeah, but
No,
yeah, this is something I've been like looking into a little bit recently. I don't know if like Warren Spector brought this up or anything, but I bet it was an influence on some of these guys. So like, I think games in the late '80s, there's also like Dungeon Master, right, which like grew out of this like the blobber genre. So like you had these old school like dungeon crawlers, like straight dungeon crawlers, like Wizardry or whatever, where you're controlling a party from first person perspective and navigating through this like really crude, like first person maze, right? If you think about like those being inspired a lot by Dungeons and Dragons, like Dungeons and Dragons has a lot of the same like mechanics we would associate with MSims nowadays, right? Like, and why they spread into like a lot of these CRPG genres, because it's sort of like you're role playing, you're like trying to come up with like interesting like solutions using the toolkit of your various characters to get past traps. Because like there's obviously combat in these games, and the combat's pretty flexible, but there's also just like regular trap solving and like navigating areas and that kind of thing. And I have at least it's my impression. And I don't know how much they've talked about this in interviews and stuff, but I definitely know that like when games like Dungeon Master came along, that like took that like turn-based blobber version of dungeon crawling and started adding like real-time elements, started adding like, oh, you can actually interact with the environment like directly and like move stuff around and like solve things in unorthodox ways, like, oh, I can throw a crate through a wall or whatever, or like a gap in the wall or whatever, and hit a switch on the other side or something that you wouldn't be able to do from like a traditional turn perspective. I have a feeling that part of the reason why they shifted in the first person perspective is because of the influence of blobbers, and because of like, oh, we see that games are starting to move into this first person perspective with real time. We should probably start doing this with some of our isometric games. So there's definitely a history of like, even though I think we see like nowadays CRPGs as very commonly like isometric, right, in some sense, there definitely is like a long history of first person like dungeon crawlers, even back when they were turn based. And I think that probably was a big influence for why once Doom came out, which sort of has like a little bit of that dungeon crawler like feel to it, right? It sort of makes sense that they would eventually see the genre synthesis as like, oh, we were already doing a bunch of first person games that are like this. Now there's a whole genre that people already understand where you like shoot. Why don't we just combine the two? Right. That's my 2 cents on it anyway.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think that's actually really, really useful bit of connective tissue, because this is probably going to sound really obvious, but in a tabletop game, if you have a DM, right, they can dynamically and sort of empathetically and like thoughtfully react to what is going on to create the most interesting experience. And the only way to have that in a digital space, in a digital game, is, I think, logically to make the game itself, like on a systemic level, as permissive as possible, right? And I think that naturally then pushes you toward these simulation elements, toward, okay, it's a real-time first person, I have a physics system, I have AI, blah, blah, blah. That sort of evolutionary strand, in hindsight, it seems really obvious, but like honestly, that's not something really that occurred to me until we talked about it now. I guess maybe to get into Deus Ex's dev history a little more, and again, what Raph mentioned, for example, that even Warren Spector himself, he kind of admitted that Deus Ex's simulation ended up being a little bit shallower than what he was going for. It's not something that I can really comment on because I haven't really played it like that. But we're definitely going to talk about that a bit. From what I understand, Warren Spector got a pretty big opportunity from whatever the publisher was at the time. And he got the job at Ion Storm. I think Ion Storm, they had 2 offices at the time, Austin and Dallas. One of them was making Daikatana with John Romero. We're going to talk about that a little bit. And the other was working on Deus Ex. Kranku, I think you're a little bit more well read than I am in that whole field, right?
I kind of like. So John Romero left id Software, and he made the Iron Storm, and he split it into the 2 offices. And Daikatana was his big bet, and we all remember the poster of him wanting to make people his bitch and so on and so forth. And like he was basically like putting all his eggs in one basket there. And then as that came out, it turned out to be a shitter. So Warren Spector and the Austin branch of the Iron Storm, they're sort of insulated from what's going on with Daikatana, and so they have a little more creative freedom to make something that they want to make, because they're not really expected to be the big performer. And as it turns out, they made the big performer. But I think it closed like basically a year after Deus Ex came out, so it was never going to be like a profitable venture, I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of how. That's like a brief sort of rundown of Ironstorm, but I want to say something like specific because we're talking a lot about Warren Spector, and there's one thing that Warren Spector brings up sometimes, and it's that we tend to have like this idea that we should attribute a lot of the development towards him. When Ironstorm, you know, it's this big group effort, and he talks a lot about like not wanting to be the sole name who takes credit for it. He doesn't make it easy on himself because he does a bunch of lectures where he's like, "I'm the director of Deus Ex, and here's how I did everything."
Yeah.
But there are like a bunch of lead designers and stuff that don't go name. People like I know Harvey Smith still works in the industry. Robin Todd still writes for, I think it's Arcane Studios. She wrote something for Redfall and Destiny and things like that. So like, yeah, that's what I know about Ironstorm, and it's what I know about the development. They went through this sort of period of like experimenting. Like I think one thing that I like to think about is like how willing they are to change things around. So, like, I think the original Deus Ex was supposed to have an intro that's similar to Half-Life, where you walk around an office and talk to people, and then, the incident happens, the inciting incident that takes place to introduce you to the world. But around the time of E3, they actually switched that around. So instead of having a very slow burn start like Half-Life, it has the incident first, and you start in media res. But that's a brief rundown of Ironstorm and the troubles and tribulations that they faced.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think especially the part about just appropriately crediting everybody. Just the longer you get away from the original development process of a game or the development cycle of a game, the harder it gets to kind of pick up all that slack and really do your due diligence on that. Again, like you said, there's so many resources from Warren Spector specifically about the development, so it's hard not to just always say, okay, he said this, and I'm gonna quote him now, and blah blah blah. So for those listening, like, I hope that's doesn't come across as disrespectful toward those other developers. Again, I'm just using the information that was like kind of available to us. I guess like it's very interesting because again, I'm gonna quote Warren Spector, but like his original idea, now that he got this big opportunity, was okay. I'm tired of all these medieval looking ass games, and I wanna combine all my favorite things. I wanna have a little bit of RPG, a little bit of shooting, and a little bit of stealth. Right? I think I think he talked about like 3 pillars. And he wanted to make the ultimate genre mashup in that way. And he was also sort of concerned with the fact that was the Dallas office the Daikatana office? I think so, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. They sort of had this reputation as these insane rock stars. And again, this crazy ad came out, and he was kind of worried how that would reflect on Deus Ex's development and that game's status. But Kranku, as you said, it ended up being the big seller, actually. And I remember there's like this big GDC talk from Warren Spector that's very detailed and interesting, and I recommend that a lot. And one thing he was focused on a little bit is that he was sort of tired of how a lot of stuff in RPGs is simulated using numbers and dice rolls and that kind of thing. I specifically remember him saying, yeah, we have better ways to do that now. We can have a more thorough and interesting simulation. I guess maybe Alan, as a big number game head, and you've also played Deus Ex, right? So do you maybe have thoughts on that?
Honestly, I don't feel like I really have a lot to say about it. I was thinking about it, and no, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Do you have a favorite skill, or do you have like a favorite thing in Deus Ex or like that?
Swimming.
Hell yeah!
I know that
means.
I will say, like, No, honestly, I really.
Alan, it's fine. You can make yourself a target. Like, just say Fire Emblem clears, and.
Well, I mean, it does. The only real MSim on this planet is Thracia 776 for the Super Famicom, which
True.
also launched I think the same year.
It was 99.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's insane for a SNES game. That's crazy. I just said SNES. Wow,
It was the second to last SNES game to release, I think.
Damn. See, I mean,
sorry about that.
No, you're good. I guess I gather that you're a big Fire Emblem fan as well, right? And also you're into Deus Ex. So maybe do you have thoughts on the RPG simulation relationship, kind of?
I think more so than Deus Ex's involvement in that, I think Anachronox is a weird, interesting part of that. Anachronox was a game that Iron Storm was developing at the same time as Daikatana and Deus Ex. And given by the fact that probably none of you have heard of it, you can tell how well that went.
I haven't, yeah.
It is in that same sort of it feels very much like someone was given the same design statement as Deus Ex and it was just made by somebody different, because it's very similar in that sort of it's a cyberpunk game with weird reactive elements and stuff, but it's more in line with that sort of traditional RPG stuff with that kind of a stat leveling system kind of things, as opposed to the way it's abstracted more in Deus Ex. And it's I think about how that if that was the big runoff success as opposed to Deus Ex, where MSims would be now, because it's so much of MSims is in the way that people talk about them now is built off of the big early ones like Deus Ex and Thief, in that people just assume they are all, or not necessarily that they assume that they all, but they associate the term only with that kind of stealth shooter game, as opposed to any game with immersive simulator elements kind of thing.
Yeah. I guess as far as Deus Ex has a stat system, right? And I guess the impression that I have of it, as someone again who hasn't really played it, is that probably ideally, if I'm thinking, okay, what must have the team's goals been with this game? I'm expecting the stat system to kind of work in a way where, okay, it actually physically lets you do the thing better, right? If I pump up my strength or jump or whatever stat, it's gonna let me jump higher, right? Instead of sort of conforming in this more abstract dice rolly kind of way where, okay, I throw the attack and then I have a random chance to miss or something.
I think it is interesting the way that they distinguish themselves because the way the stats are work in the stat leveling stuff in Anachronox works, for example, is a lot of that same dice rolly kind of thing where it's higher probabilities or whatever, or the Fallout equivalent of meet the stat check level thing.
Yeah.
Whereas in Deus Ex it's all if you so I know you said you've gotten you've touched Deus Ex, you've booted up the game once kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
If you've seen the shooting mechanics in Deus Ex are funny to say the least. And so the way that leveling the relevant gun stat is basically, it makes it so that your crosshair closes in faster with that weapon, and then you can it's weird stuff like that, as opposed to more traditional dice rolly things, but in a way that feels very much like it's doing the same thing in a slightly different way.
Yeah, see, thank you for saying that, because I was guessing a little bit, right? But that's the exact kind of difference I was talking about, where the stats implementation is more, I'm gonna say, quote unquote, mechanical in a way. Maybe Raph, as a big fan of defeatist RPGs and of speedruns and also a Deus Ex player, maybe are you sort of into the way maybe Immersive Sims use stats, a game like Deus Ex uses stats, and do you have thoughts maybe on the thing Warren Spector talked about with, okay, this is a better way to simulate it?
There's a lot there. I think the most interesting thing about Deus Ex compared to other ImSimi or I guess like RPG games is that you can kind of do anything regardless of your stats. Like your gun still shoots like a gun, like a crappy gun that's inaccurate, but like it does damage. It kills people. It can kill people in one hit still. I think a lot of modern ImSimi kind of games or like RPG kind of games sort of lean into specialization of like narrowing your focus on a small subset of skills while excluding everything else.
Yeah.
Whereas Deus Ex, it's like, no, you're kind of you're gonna lockpick, you're gonna throw grenades, you're gonna shoot, you're gonna stab, and the stat system is shallow enough that like investing in things is useful, but like not necessary for like efficiency's sake. I'm like looking at a list of the skills right now because I forgot what they were. Yeah, like lockpicking, right? That's a weird thing. Like most games with lockpicking, there's like you have to hit a certain level before you can lockpick a door, right? If it's a level 2 door, you need a level 2 skill for it. Whereas in Deus Ex, it doesn't matter. You can use any lockpick on any kind of door. It just matters how many lockpicks you have to go through first. So it's like
you're more efficient with them.
Yeah, it's an efficiency problem. I think the only like truly exclusionary like stat is computers, like computer hacking. Like you actually do need like a certain level of computer hacking to hack something, but yeah, most of the actual like exclusionary like RPG mechanics in Deus Ex come from the augmentations, or like you can equip a perk to a certain body part. You can only pick one of 2 perks. So like I can have better stabbing, or I can pick up heavy objects, right? I can run really fast, or I can run silently. It's like one or the other. And those aren't really stats. Those are perks, right? Those are like that's utility that's being added to your character rather than actual just dice rolls.
Yeah.
It's big concept. It's very complex. We'll probably talk about it next episode.
Yeah, I'm like curious sort of how it executes that on that actually, like how it sort of manifests as okay, this is a fun game actually. I remember Ant, who's not here today. I think he's also played Deus Ex, and he sort of made this argument that it's kind of cool that the game will actually throw you sometimes into the same exact situation regardless of your build. So you're gonna have to deal with like 5 guys even though you didn't prepare yourself for that at all, right? That definitely really interests me.
Right, because I think a lot of modern interpretations of MSIMs, once again, they have to define every level. It's like every level has to have like one route for each build.
Yeah.
For every possible playstyle, whereas Deus Ex, it technically allows every playstyle, but it clearly favors one over the other depending on the level. Like the first level, it's like, oh, it's stealth is easy, and then the second level, it's like, oh god, how do you stealth with this? It's like there's too many enemies densely packed.
I think it's also interesting comparing how the original Deus Ex works with that compared to Deus Ex Human Revolution, whereas like in the capacity of like you're allowed to do anything at any point, you just might do it a little worse. Whereas in Deus Ex Human Revolution, like if you don't specifically spec into like combat, you die in like 3 shots. Like you have such a diminished capacity to do something you haven't specifically spec'd into as compared to the original game, which is, I mean, it's also just like the that trend as well in general ImSim-y kind of games in more recent ImSim games where they have that more linear gradation of you are playing a stealth build, you are playing a combat build thing, even outside of just Deus Ex.
Yeah, totally. Even from the little of Human Revolution that I played, I think the just impression that I got is okay, I'm picking one of 3 games, right? 3 slightly different games. Even at the time, that didn't strike me as very ImSim-y, you know, in a way. And again, we come back to the city. Okay, like it really depends on your personal definition of it, right? But I feel like the Deus Ex 1 approach that definitely sounds way more my speed. So I'm very curious about that. I guess we talked about how the simulation of the game is not actually that deep. Maybe we'll save that talking point for when we actually get into it, because I think that's actually easier to, for us newcomers as well to say something substantial about it. I guess maybe we'll go over our final topic for today, which is like our expectations for Deus Ex, specifically for the newcomers. Ryan, I haven't gotten you in so far. I know you've said that, just like me, you're also gonna play the game on the immaculate, underrated, beautiful PlayStation 2 port.
Oh God. Oh no. Ryan, don't do it. Don't do it. You don't have the inventory system anymore. There's no more RE4 stuff. It's just a bunch.
Oh
of
yeah,
I won't know what's missing.
So true. You get me, Ryan. That's why you're my guy. Are you like excited to play it in general?
Sure. I guess more like the historical curiosity.
Oh, okay.
For context, I mentioned this in the chat, but I'm in the same situation of I bought the game on PC, I started it up, I played 2 minutes, and I said I will play this later, and that was 4 years ago.
that's so relatable. I mean, you're a big arcade gamer, right? You're a big skill gamer.
I am becoming a big arcade gamer. Yeah.
Do you have like do you just have like just any passion for Sims in general? Is there anyone that you like clicked with really in the past?
Bongayo Spirits.
Oh hell yeah, yes, thank you. Great game. Great game.
I guess not yet. As some might say, my genre literacy is very low.
Nah, that's okay.
But you know, I'm open to playing it.
Yeah, dude. Like, I mean, like I said, I'll play it on the PlayStation 2. I think I announced this on the Pikmin episode, right? That I'm gonna go out of my way to play every game on a console, because it's Beach Gen Game Club. You know, it's the Beach generation. PC doesn't belong to any generation. Like, what the fuck is this? Like, you gotta play it on the PlayStation 2. That's the only way that counts.
Can I try and convince you otherwise? Please?
No.
I don't mean to interrupt, but there's one thing I'm really interested to hear from everyone who plays this game for the first time, and it's sort of like the choices they make and the messages they make during their playthrough. And I think this game deserves like a level of respect that you know, it's going to sound corny, but like I think the messages in the game are pretty cogent and they can apply to the current day. And they've made the game makes a bunch of predictions about the future, which is now. And I just feel that like it's going to turn into a bit of like a port report if we just like if it's just like, oh, I'm playing the PS2 version. Look how fucking shit the levels are, and the inventory is not very good.
Well, I mean, that's why it's good to have a big round where everybody can kind of contribute.
Variety's good.
Exactly. I mean, most of us are gonna play on PC. Most of us are not mentally ill, I hope. Like me. I mean, even as much of a meme as I'm kind of making it, obviously I'm still gonna try to like play it seriously, right? And I mean, for me, there's I watched the Digital Foundry video, for example, and the controller interface does seem genuinely clever, and it actually. I guess one thing that is interesting about it is that it was, I think, developed by Ironstorm, the port. So they actually did make some updates even that aren't straight like porting concessions. So I'm kind of interested in it from that angle.
It has some interesting like different lighting effects and stuff. It looks quite nice actually.
Yeah. It definitely doesn't seem like, it seems sort of obsolete, right? It's really easy to run the game on PC now. So like literally the only reason to play it is if you're curious and if you really want to play with the controller. But it seems like a genuinely interesting port, so I'm curious about it from that angle, and then I'm gonna play on my little CRT, I'm gonna sit in my beanbag with a blanket, like, we're excited for that. Björn, you're the PC's greatest warrior, right? You're a big PC gamer fan. Like...
Yeah, I'm the I touch anything and it breaks instantly guy. Yeah, I've looked into getting the PC version up and running the best way without like modding it into something that doesn't resemble the original game anymore. Like I wish I wish Night Dive would do a version of Deus Ex like they did with System Shock, which I played last year for the first time. But yeah, I'm just doing like the most basic shit to get it running in a good resolution, and then I'm hoping for an interesting ride. Like I've never played Deus Ex besides I think like you like the first 10-15 minutes or so of the game.
Yeah.
Like once a few years ago. So I've seen so many videos about it for the past 10 years. So I'm kind of interested in seeing how the like game that's in my mind from like reading about it, hearing about it, seeing it in so many different videos, and how that compares to my actual playthrough for the first time. So yeah, taking this chance to finally getting the game off my backlog.
Hell yeah. I think it is the case. Oh, sorry, Alan, go ahead.
I did want to say, you know, as someone who's like raised a Nintendrone and even like only recently recovering from that stuff, and they make like the least clunky games, you know. I was surprised at honestly how not horrible the experience was once I did get the game running. Like I expected to be like, oh, the jank, oh, the clunkiness.
I love the song, but oh, the mixing, the mixing.
But I honestly just kind of cruised like right through. I think I even texted and was like, "Hey, the shooting isn't the worst thing in the world," and they were like, "Well, you're wrong, but."
I think it is the case that you can just download it off Steam and it's gonna run. But like ideally, there's some fixes. There's like there's a DirectX 10 renderer, I think, and a different exe that you should download for the ideal experience. Didn't seem like too big of a deal, yeah. But it's like, you know, it's way easier to just play on PS2. You know, just put the game in and it works. And you know, console's clear.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I mean, so Raph, you were like very vehemently against the idea of playing on console. Do you have like thoughts on that? Like more detailed thoughts?
I mean, the levels are smaller and have less enemies in them, so there's like less chance for the systems to really do cool stuff. The inventory system, which is kind of core to the game, as it's like a dungeon crawler, is missing. So you can kind of just stack up on stuff.
You just have infinite inventory?
Just towards stuff. There's no limitations on things except for guns. I think it's like you can carry like 4 or 5 guns max, but everything else just like, boom, carry it.
That's very strange, okay.
A bajillion healing items, have a bajillion whatever the hell you want. You can carry every single melee weapon with no issue, and like, blah, blah, blah. They also got rid of the password system, which makes sense because it's like it's on a PS2. You can't really type things in.
Yeah.
But they didn't really change any of the puzzles to accommodate that, so the game just gives you the answers half the time. Or like one of the cool things about the game is how you can like piece together passwords and usernames based on context clues that aren't explicitly laid out to you. But now you don't have that. It just says here's the answer. Hit the button.
Man. See, I wish you hadn't said all that, because now you're making me second guess my terrible decisions. Like, see, maybe I'll treat this like as my easy mode playthrough, and then I'm gonna play it for real like later. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll change my mind.
You know what console port isn't compromised like this? Morrowind on Xbox.
So true.
Tsukihime on GBA. That's right, baby.
Oh my god.
I will say that the PC control scheme of like making you use all the function keys is kind of clunky. So PS2 has that advantage.
I mean, you all know I'm very. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I was gonna say like the making you use the function keys thing. Like it is kind of dumb, but like you can remap them to be like the function keys are for like all of the augmentations, whatever. Like if you want to activate the quick running or the silent running thing, you have to push the button for that. And it's mapped to one of those. You can move those around to be like because by default the one that you have automatically is the flashlight. It's like it's night vision, but it's a flashlight, and it's like on F12, which is fucking annoying. But you can just like move that to a button that isn't
no. No, interfacing with the obscure parts of the keyboard is like part of the Ludo, bro. It's like
So
you're like a
true,
real
so
hacker
true.
man hitting F12.
I literally do not have function keys on my keyboard. So
Oh my
Oh,
god,
it'd be
that's
great.
that's the real hard mode. Give me Deus Ex.
I believe with it's been so long since I've installed it, but like the thing you install on PC to make it run better has a thing for you to remap keys as well, so you can
Yeah.
avoid
Cool.
that horrible issue.
Cool. Can you play at high frame rates, like higher than 60? Or
I
Yeah.
don't remember. I think so.
okay, cool, nice. Pang and saying in chat, you Pang, I thought you said like 60 FPS is the worst frame rate. Because it's too high to be cinematic, but too low to be truly smooth. So you should be a fan of playing higher at 60, right? Like, I don't know.
No, he wants to play it lower than 60.
I'm gonna wait for I'm sorry, listeners, you're gonna have to wait for his response. Not for a bad game, okay. 300
I think
Yeah.
I think it has like a threshold of like 100 FPS, and if you go above that, then the game starts to speed up and it looks hysterically funny.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because like all the cutscenes play at hyperspeed.
Oh, I
Yeah,
do remember
okay,
that being
okay.
an issue. The cutscenes do fuck up with that.
Yeah, I just didn't get Deus Ex. I kind of skimmed it at 2x speed, you know.
Me playing Tsukihime.
The Tsukihime speedrun where you just hold down the.
I'm imagining this chair scene, but in like Alvin the Chipmunk's voice.
Okay, I think we're getting too into with the references. Look forward to when we play Deus Ex. Woo!
Woo!
Eee.
Whoa. Oh, one last thing though. Is it
Oh, yeah.
recording?
Yeah, we're still
Okay.
recording.
I'm kind of scared to return to it because I can't look at JC Denton without thinking of like Dracula Flow. I'm high on 12 Jason Bournes right now. Like, oh no.
I thought you were gonna say Elon Musk.
I'm in your NACO HP flipping perks.
All right, it happened. Y'all successfully bullied me into playing a PC game. Y'all steered me off my path. And the worst part is, I'm having a good time. So yeah,
Welcome aboard, JC.
So we wrote some notes for we all played a couple hours of this game. I'm at the start of mission 4 personally. Pang and Björn are sort of around mission 3. And the rest of y'all are even farther, like actually close to the end. The first item on our notes I wrote down is console babies hop into a PC game. Cause like I mean I don't want to spend too much time on this, right? I don't want to be like too indulgent with that, but I guess both now and in the context of its own time, the idea of having to deal with this is a very inherently PC game, right? It's a game that expects you to have a full keyboard. It, like literally it maps stuff to the function keys. You type in passwords, shit like that. Like both then and now, I think that is again something that is not super comfy and easy to slip into for a lot of people, maybe. For this specific case, I think a lot of us, there's a modern renderer you can install that just makes the game run a little better and a little more pleasantly. I'm playing at 120 frames and I'm getting I did all the NVIDIA settings shit and I'm still getting the odd stutter here and there. I don't know if anyone has that experience maybe. But overall it's been fine. I guess maybe Björn as like the biggest PC gamer of them all. Did you was it sort of awkward for you to jump into this?
I mean, I played System Shock 1 last year for the first time. So that one is it's kind of weird because that game is even more abstracted. Like it's a kind of in between point. I think the mechanics and structure, how that game works in control wise, stems from the Ultima Underworlds blah 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 series or something. I've never played those, and so you more or less interact with the game through the screen. Like everything is it's less mapped to the keys, or although you can still quick select a lot of things, you mostly interact with the screen itself. And Deus Ex has all of these functions, but it plays like a normal, I wouldn't say modern game, but like a normal PC game in that aspect. So it's weird. Like the more abstract way I found easier to get used to or get accustomed to. And here it's a bit like I'm not the biggest PC gamer fan. I'm not the biggest fan of the normal keyboard layout. Feel like it's still pretty
Unnatural,
like
maybe?
awkward,
Yeah.
unnatural for me to like use use a few of like the hands in this way. But I'm getting the hang of it so far. So. But yeah, the first, I think like the first 20 minutes in the training mission was just me trying to find the best way to remap everything, and then just seeing like how many functions of the keyboard I actually use. Like
surreal,
so much shit is you can just do with the keyboard itself, and then like shit like scope is set to left bracket. Like what the fuck?
I'll say also I recently got one of those cool lap desks. So I've just been playing this on my giant like fuck off TV, like with the keyboard and mouse in my lap, and it works way better than it should. So that's kind of sick. And I showed you all my setup, and you were like, yeah. I didn't get shit on like I expected, you know. I'm also like an owie ouch carpal tunnel wrist gamer, you know. So that's, I don't actually have carpal tunnel, but I do use a vertical mouse. I do like wrist pain is definitely like a consideration for me. So whenever I have to jump into mouse and keyboard, it's sort of there's sort of some hesitance. But it's been actually fine on that front. Pang was mentioning earlier that Deus Ex is like one of those games of that vintage that still doesn't fully expect you to have mouse look. It actually still maps the rotation keys to the rotation functions to keyboard keys, which is leads to a lot of redundancy on the keyboard.
Yeah.
I
mean, is going so far as like a lot of console games at this time, like before right stick camera was like really common. They had like on the L trigger, if you press it, it centers the camera behind you. And they have this map to F in this game, and like to me, it's like I literally cannot imagine why I would ever need this, right? So I like instantly unmapped this, but I was like, well, I guess if I was playing like tank controls, and then I did some like I think there's like camera rotation buttons on here, so that would let me center it back. But yeah, like because it sort of eats up like every key around WASD. So you do have WASD and you do have mouse from the get go, but then you also have like I still use Q and E for like leaning out from behind walls because I do think that is swag.
Yeah.
But like Z, X, C, F, Z or V, I think maybe E, or maybe R, I think are just all mapped to like random like movement shit. And yeah, I just immediately like unbound as much of that shit as I could. Not because like I'm against it, but more just because like I need that space for other shit. Because like scope on right bracket and yeah, it's just not
the flashlight. The flashlight is on F12 by default.
I still have that on F12. I don't know how to change it. It wouldn't let me change it. I need to try again. It might let me. But I'm just taking my hand off the mouse every time I need to use the. Well, and same with the I have the upgrade that lets me pick up like gigantic boxes.
Ooh.
And that's on F6. I cannot figure out a way to change that. I might have just not looked hard enough.
You go into the settings and it says like it doesn't have like a specific action. It just says F1 through.
Yeah, that's it.
But it's kind of annoying because like even if you rebind those keys, it doesn't update the actual key image in like the little icon.
Yeah.
So it will still say like press F6, which is really annoying because when you've got all these augments that you want to map, and it's like, well, I'm trying to logic my way through this. I'll put like muscles on M for like picking up stuff or whatever, but you're not going to actually think of that in the moment. Like, why would the fuck would I ever press the M key on a fucking first-person shooter?
Yeah.
Like, so and it's really hard on a 65% keyboard.
Oh god.
So what I've been doing instead is just like pausing the game, opening the menu, equipping the augment from there.
Yeah.
That's
Which,
another
it
thing,
sounds
yeah.
terrible, but it's like, you know, you menu through RPGs anyway. It's actually not that bad, to be honest.
Yeah, that's
I'm
like
glad
oh,
that-
sorry. Go ahead.
I'll just say I'm glad that my girlfriend got me. I think this is like 85% for Christmas because we were both running on either, I think it was 60%, and it was bugging the shit. Well, because I program a lot, so I need all those extra keys, and I want tilde because like I'm working in Linux and all that shit. And so I'm glad she got me one because then I was using it for PSO Blueburst before this, which is helpful, but it doesn't use that many of the buttons. But now I'm playing It's like, okay, I'm really glad that I got this keyboard before I started playing on PC again.
Yeah, just one little thing. The flashlight, like I mentioned, it's on F12 by default, and F12 is also by default the screenshot key on Steam. So whenever so I've just been taking a billion screenshots, like whenever I use the flashlight.
Vents.
Yeah, and I just left it because it's funny, you know. Yeah, the reason I want to talk about this is that I think it's easy to forget that back when Deus Ex came out, there was no easy path to digital distribution on PC or anywhere really. So you were reliant on stores, and you were reliant on that visibility. And consoles, you know, you just gotta say it, like they were just the dominant force at the time, right? They really dictated the trends. You ideally wanted to be on a console to be really successful.
The thing about PC SKUs and console SKUs from around this time is that they're fundamentally like different experiences. So you did have big shifters on the PC, but they weren't what you'd think now as like a multi-platform game. It would be things like, oh, you want to play The Sims, well, you play that on PC. Or you want to play like StarCraft, or you want to play simulation games like Roller Coaster Tycoon. That's the sort of thing that you'd play on PC, and those did sell fairly substantial numbers, but it wouldn't be like like Mario level numbers.
Yeah, and
well, it's also worth
go ahead.
mentioning that especially at this time, I think this is around the time we first started getting like actual graphics cards and that sort of standardizing. But like if you think performance is bad now with like between different computers and trying to get it configured, like it was even worse back then. It was also the time when like this is Dreamcast era, and PS2 launched this year as well. I mean, you look at some of the like the Dreamcast games. Like, I mean, when we played Shenmue looks better than this game. Like, I wouldn't say by like a lot, but it does look a little better. Because the Dreamcast, had a nice off-the-shelf GPU, or like equivalent of a GPU at the time. Had a nice off-the-shelf like processor and all that. It's like very nice standardized console. It had Windows on board. Like a lot of those games, like Quake 3, like people would buy like Quake 3 and Unreal and play it on Dreamcast with keyboard and mouse, and because it also had online capability. Like this is still a time when I think there was a thought that console could replace, or could be a substitute for PC for the same games. Nowadays, obviously, like if you want the best, like most high fidelity experience, it's always going to be PC. But at least at this time, I think there was definitely, consoles definitely had a lot more parity, like graphics wise and like performance wise with the PCs.
Deus Ex wasn't really known for like being a good-looking game, even for its time. Really, like even Half-Life and like first-person games on PC like look a bit better than Deus Ex. Really, it was kind of known for like it's the game with its depth and its cyberpunk and its RPG and stuff.
Yes,
yeah.
For sure.
I think Warren Spector even famously said, like, okay, if they compare us on graphics, we're dead. If they compare us on combat individually, we're dead. If they compare us on stealth individually to Thief or something, we're dead. It's they were really they really were banking on like it being more than the sum of its parts.
They invented the holistic experience.
So true.
The first modern AAA.
Backlogged would love this game.
Well, they do.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
I guess like from all of that, you understand the incentive to again be on a console, be present for that market, and then inherently there's this tension of, okay, can we even make immersive sims like this when they're so reliant on you having a keyboard and having like a lot of memory and all that shit. And I don't know much about the sequel, Invisible War, but I think that was very much, instead of, okay, it's developed for PC and then was ported to the PS2 with some compromises later. Invisible War was very much developed in tandem with the Xbox version. And maybe I think you know, in our group, I sort of expect Raph to know a bit about this. Like, do you have thoughts on Invisible War really quickly? We're probably not gonna cover you know, it again in the future. So like, what did Invisible War, maybe to break it down, did that spell the death of immersive sims for a while, or was the reaction maybe over dramatic? I don't know. What was that all about?
It's bad. So yeah, I think it came out after Thief 3. I don't know. It's in this weird. The weird history of Sims is that the first game sells really well and is critically acclaimed, and then the sequel tends to sell like half as much. Like, you see that with System Shock, you see that with the first Deus Ex, you see that with Human Revolution, you see that with Dishonored, to the point that when it came time to make Bioshock, they deliberately changed the name because they just assumed that making sequel titles would cause the game to bomb. So I guess
was that because of the numbering? Like nowadays, it's always if the previous game is very well received, the sequel will sell more, and if the later game is total shit, the game after that will sell less. Like, you can see that with going from Resident Evil 4 to 5 to 6 to 7. So yeah, I think it just is more this weird marketing like angst they have. And as no, people will be that don't understand. Do I have to play the previous game? So we just have to change the title without any actual data behind it. But I remember, like, even as a console guy, like, I remember the sequel being pretty big in previews. Like, the PR push was pretty great, and then the game was ass. So I remember all the previews being like, oh my god, this is so interesting, and it's built for consoles, and then the reviews dropped, and it's just dead in its tracks instantly. Like, the fans of the previous game hated it, and then new people were not really interested. Like, I think one of the main issues that the first game has like 4 different endings, and the sequel just says, yeah, they're all canon.
That's kind of awesome, actually. That's the way to do it.
That's awesome.
The endings to Invisible War are fucking mental.
I was watching some like reviews of Invisible War, and there's stuff like, it's actually, I think it wasn't just that it was designed for consoles as well as PC, but it was like kind of clearly designed for consoles first. Like, it's one of those where the UI suits like a controller, but not a mouse and keyboard. There's things like there's universal ammo, so all your weapons share the same like draw from the same like resource, but it's like if you use 2 rockets and you're down to, and you have like 1 rocket left, and you switch to your pistol, it's like you have like 2 pistol shots left instead of having it be independent from, oh, if I use up all my rockets, at least I have other things to fall back on. And there's things like the areas are really, really small. There was like a comparison between that, like Hell's Kitchen, where it's this pretty big, fairly impressive little like block of a city, versus downtown Seattle, which is like it's like an alleyway with 3 different like level transitions. So it's like, downtown Seattle, and there's a coffee shop, and then there's like 2 different loading screens you can enter.
That is so interesting to me, because like, yeah, we discussed it a little bit. Alan and Ryan, unfortunately, they couldn't make it today to report back on their experience with the PS2 port of Deus Ex, right? But like, just the fact that, okay, the game, it is with compromises, but it is on the PlayStation 2, right? So the fact that they decided to cut it even more severely than that with Invisible War, just for both versions of that game, is sort of crazy. I don't know.
John just reminded me of something actually. Is that while I was playing Deus Ex 1, I was thinking of like, wouldn't it be really convenient if I had like a radial menu and could pick organs or whatever? And then I sort of thought, well, how did Human Revolution like simplify the augments? And I installed that game again, and it's kind of weird because that is a very console-oriented game, and you can tell because there's a lot more passive augments. Like, you don't activate the augment for your legs to remove fall damage. You just have no fall damage if you buy the augment for your legs. But there's only like 4 actually active augments that you can press a button to activate, which is like the silent running, this cloak, and something else. But they're all mapped to like a 4-quadrant menu that obviously translates to a D-pad on a controller. But on a PC, like, you don't have a D-pad, so it still uses the F keys like it does in the old game. So it's like they didn't really solve the problem at all. If you don't want to press the F keys, I suppose you could rebind them to like the arrow keys. But yeah, it's like, so even the IDOS Montreal games, they feel a lot more like built for console than the first one.
Yeah. Again, I guess like, even though like Pang said, consoles are not nearly as competitive with PC as they used to be, sort of on a technological level. There's like maybe even more pressure to have that kind of parity, right? To have to not throw console players for a loop, and then serve everybody kind of that experience. I guess yeah. Now that we're on like those kind of specific mechanics, or how to activate AUX, shit like that, maybe we can talk about the game a little more. So yeah, I guess this is, you're this agent, you have a bunch of tools, you have weapons, you have pistols, batons, you have this little taser, right? And one of your first missions, or your first mission, is to sneak into this building that was taken over by terrorists. And the maps are pretty wide and open, in my opinion, and they sort of they present you like with this very careful drip feed of like, okay, it's a single guy standing in like this oasis of nothing, and you slowly approach them, right, and figure out what to do with them. And I guess the thing I brushed up against is that, okay, interacting with enemies does not feel especially polished. I think we talked about sort of the reticle system for ranged weapons, where the longer you aim at a thing, the more your reticle will sort of close in, and that will dictate the accuracy of your shot. So that's the thing you can like pay attention to make things more consistent. But like, I think at the end of the day, okay, you shoot at a guy and like it doesn't really feel like he was responding to it very much. I found the ranges of melee tools relatively opaque and weird. But that's all of that is not to say that it's not something you can't get used to. But it was definitely pretty noticeable to me. Maybe Kranku, as a big fan of the game, who has a lot of familiarity with it, do you have maybe thoughts on that?
One of my thoughts was it's kind of like narratively stupid that you're this super soldier with billions of augments and you've got to like wait to like aim a gun. Like, I don't know who here has actually fired a gun, but it's not fucking complicated. You just point the fucking thing at whatever you want to shoot and shoot it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not JC Denton. I've fired a 45 pistol at a target. It's not the fucking rocket science, but like I get it. It's like a gameplay thing, right? So it's like it incentivizes you to put more stuff into pistols or whatever. But I've been using like 5 different weapons this playthrough, so I've had no inventory space. But there's weapons that I really like. I like that a lot of people don't like the prod. I do like the prod because I like that you can get creative with like stunning people. You can just walk around and have them sort of spaz out while you try and take someone else out. I think it's really funny. I've been trying to use the stealth pistol a bit because you can attach like scopes and clip-sized magazines and stuff to it. I think it's really cool. The sniper rifle I think is pretty cool. The only thing that I have an issue with is like the baton is, it's a very powerful stealth weapon and people like to use it. But occasionally it just goes wrong and you just sort of slap a guy across the ass with it and nothing happens. So again, it's another reason to use the prod because that never fails. But
yeah.
I usually do prod like leading into baton.
Yeah.
I just find it to be like, I save a little bit of charge, but then also it's like easier to set up the right hitbox because when they're squeaming or like moving around a lot, it's like it can be hard to actually get a proper kill with the baton. Because usually, I mean, I've had some occasionally they'll go down in one hit, but like if they don't, you can maybe get 2 hits in before they actually run away, and then if there's an alarm nearby, it's like it's sort of over.
I got into a situation where I was just repeatedly slapping a guy who was trying to activate the alarm, and it kept stunning him. So it was just a situation where I just like constantly stunning him from stopping the alarm, and it's just like this Benny Hill moment, running around just trying to slap a guy.
See, I didn't know about the different melee hitboxes until you guys told me about it. So I've been the ass slap with the baton has been my default, has been my go-to. And most of the time it does actually work in one hit. And you can follow them quickly enough that it doesn't really go awry most of the time. I guess like I'm sort of Kranku, what you brought up about like it's narratively stupid to shoot a gun and stuff, but like it sort of makes sense gameplay-wise. I guess I really thought about if it was like more intrinsically fun or polished to shoot guys and slap guys and all that shit, maybe that would sort of, I don't want to say, if the game was more polished it would actually ruin it and it's like super Ludo or whatever. Like
it would be like Human Revolution, where it's just like Gears of War. You can just like cover in and out and kill people with engines and stuff.
Like there's a weird tension there. There's like like
the load bearing shooting controls.
They're
load bearing shooting controls.
Yeah, like it's like I don't find it super intrinsically enjoyable to interact with stuff, but if it was that, like I part of the design intent of this game, and you can see this everywhere, we already talked about this in the first episode, but like they sort of want you to be able to just kind of do everything, right? It doesn't want to be a game where I invest stat points in the right thing and then I can just bypass the lock or whatever, which from what I played of Human Revolution, for example, that's sort of what that game feels like. But then at the same time, they don't want you to be so good at doing things that you can just do the thing and not think about it and play like a shooter or something, right? Maybe Raph, I'm curious, do you have thoughts on that?
It's a common issue of like how do you convey skill in a shooter?
Yeah.
Like through an RPG mechanics. Because like a lot of games try to lower your damage and just make your guns do nothing. And Deus Ex clearly doesn't want to do that. Even if you get a damage bonus, like at a base level, your guns will still like kill people from stealth, right? They want that to work that way. I still go back and forth on it because I think it's interesting that any gun can be usable from stealth, but then you have to invest to use it in combat frequently if you want like accuracy mid combat. I think it's fine as is. I'm sure there's a better way of doing it, but I'm not sure what that would be exactly.
Well, I think. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think the thing now might be like more like weaknesses for enemies, where things like you could shoot joints on robots, or if these guys are wearing like armor and stuff. So if you score, like I think we've noticed like the jankiness of the hitboxes, but things like if you're able to shoot them in their face compared to the back of the head, where there might be like a glancing shot or something.
I think also this kind of system, like you can tell they did not want to make it so you like sort of choose one or the other, right?
Yeah.
Like very often because I've been sort of mostly playing in like a stealthy sort of way, but when it's not like say like you know, like the old Metal Gear Solids or something, where like if you get caught, you're just fucked. It's like almost always just, you know, I have like what, maybe a pistol, sniper, shotgun, and then, you know, if shit happens, I can take on like a few guys, right? Like maybe even like 4 or 5 or 6, which does feel a little like it is a little bit overly super soldier-ish. Like, now I at least like I'm like literally right now doing the airfield section, and there's like a sniper rifle guy. It's like, yeah, I can't like, if I try to go fight some guys, then I will get shot and just insta-domed die, right? But I mean, for most of it, you can tell that like they really didn't want to encourage people to like, okay, if you're playing stealth, you have to play stealth. It's sort of like, okay, well, if something happens in stealth, we're gonna give you lots of tools to get out of it, and it's very fluid in that way. Like moving between gameplay styles is very fluid in this one. I feel.
Yeah, what Raph said earlier, like it feels like there may be a better way to do this kind of experience, but it is fine the way it is. That was where I kind of ultimately landed in the end. Because yeah, especially when I did the airfield section, I started to really enjoy the game. And like with the system as it is, there's some really cool strategies you can do. For example, the trank darts, it sort of threw me at the start that it didn't seem like there was a way to knock people out instantly. I think from what you guys said, it seems like that can get better with like upgrades or if you target certain hitboxes, right? But one thing I really like about the darts is that you fire them and then the enemy will definitely eventually drop to the floor, right? They will drop unconscious. So if you're willing to be a little bit lame and like camp it out, you could trank dart someone from your hiding spot, go back, wait for them to drop, then do the next guy, right? It's this really reliable way of slowly picking off guys once, you know, as long as you've picked a good spot to like go back to. I guess maybe that's like I when I did this, when I played this way, I thought it was sort of cool, but at the same time it does make you acknowledge, okay, the AI is pretty bad. I do think there is some nice touches of realism. I could kind of see what they were trying to do. For example, enemies have a self-preservation instinct, which I thought was kind of cool. If they take enough damage, they will run away. I'm not sure if there's more nuance to how that kind of works. Maybe there's some enemy types where it's like different, but it's the thing is from a game design mechanical depth perspective, it just straight up makes the game easier, right? Because like literally, okay, they stop fighting you, and it's just easier to kill them now, right? So it's not really exactly interesting, like in terms of like making you make decisions. But I did find it like this is something the game is like uniquely doing kind of level, and I'm sort of surprised by it. I just thought it was kind of neat. But yeah, just generally, we've talked a lot about sort of privately how enemies don't notice unconscious bodies, which seems kind of it's kind of wild to me that was like not considered in the design at all.
I think they do. I just think that they have a really like short field of view for what like the bodies they can notice. Because I'm pretty sure that it has happened to me once in this playthrough that I've knocked someone out and didn't notice that there was a soldier nearby, and they did actually spot the body. So I don't know exactly how it works. I think there is a system in place for how they recognize knocked out corpses or whatever. But yeah, most of the time it just doesn't seem to work.
I just see it as world building, like they don't care anymore.
It's a fucked up world, man. Yeah. Do they?
You
notice...
can sort of tell, like in general, their like field of view is very short. Like it's sort of like some of the stealth sections of this game remind me of like that part near the end of MGS4 where you're on Outer Haven and there's all the frog troops. And I remember when I did that section, I sort of just like lay down on the ground because a bunch of frogs swarm me at the beginning. And because of the octo camo in that game, it gives you so much camo that they'll walk right up to you and be like, "Is there something here?" And then you just point blank shoot in the face. And there's a bunch of times in this game where feels like I do that without camo. Like that's just how poor the the field of vision is on these guys sometimes, especially with the whole like light dark system, which sort of I guess coarsely affects it. I don't really understand how it works. Other than that, obviously being in dark is more stealthy, but I don't know. But you can tell that they're just like they're just a little dumb. They're pretty dumb.
Me personally, I mostly play stealth. Like it always goes in this direction in these kind of games. I feel like, because like when the normal combat isn't really interesting, I don't have I don't really have any fun doing it this way. It's more like I got spotted, I have to get out of this situation. It's never okay, I go in fighting enemies when the combat itself is not very fun. Like when I compare it to the Dishonored games, like those have actually interesting combat actions. Like there's so much cool shit you can do in these games if you combine all the actions and then line enemies up, swap places, like get them to shoot themselves with their own bullets and stuff. Like here, it's more. I feel it's more of a kind of. I don't want to say puzzle game, but for me, the fun is like not really doing the action themselves and getting good at it, but more like figuring out the stuff, like putting the puzzle together, exploring the world, and finding new cool ways to do a certain mission, like finding the secret code, or finding a event you can go through, like just the different ways you can find solutions, and maybe not doing the like actually doing the solutions themselves. Like I feel like that is like, at least to me so far, is like more the more interesting interaction in this game compared to actually doing the stuff like in Metal Gear Solid or in Dishonored, for example. Like I feel those are different kind of approaches to stealth.
Yeah, I feel that. I guess like about fields of vision for enemies and shit again. Like 98% of the time, it feels very much tipped in the player's favor. But like, at the same time, I had so many moments where just gauging it really, like, why did the guy not notice me right now? Or why did he notice me right now? It's so opaque and strange. And this is only semi-related, but I've kind of realized, okay, I hate the cameras in this game. Because the cameras, they so they will, I think they will just pan around kind of in real time. Doesn't matter if they're on screen right now or not. And once you establish line of sight from yourself to the camera, in that moment, obviously you can't know if the camera is going to be looking at you already, or in your direction, I should say. The moments, from what I understand, from what I could gather, the moments you're in frame of the camera, you immediately count as spotted or detected, and the alarm will go off. In most other stealth, well, maybe not most, but like in some other stealth games that I've played, like MGS, for example, it's usually like, okay, the camera will play a sound, and then you have to be in the frame for a couple seconds at least, before you're detected.
Are you sure about that? Because I thought the way I've been doing the cameras is that they notice you and they put off a little alarm sound, but then you have like a small couple of seconds to run out
Oh,
and
you
kill
know
you.
what?
They do.
You
Yes,
may be.
they do.
Oh, you might be right. Actually, see, because. Oh yeah. Sorry, yeah. I'm silly. Because like it plays an alarm sound, and I thought that was the alarm, right? But no, the proper alarm actually starts later. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I think one of the big improvements to the cameras would be if you'd just able to like shoot them and disable them or something.
That'd be kind of
Because
cool.
they're
Yeah.
kind of just they're just indestructible as it
That
stands.
that would feel kind of
Yes.
more realistic. And like if it would feel appropriate for the mechanics, you know, I think for some build types that would make sense to have that. Yeah, I think it's just the way they telegraphed, like the way the sounds, the nature of the sound. It sounds like an alarm, right? It doesn't sound like, oh, I was in, like, you know, like in MGS, for example, it's this little like, beep, like, when you're in the frame. Which to me signals more, oh, okay, I'm not fucked yet, but yeah, I should get out of here. Whereas with Deus Ex, I confused it for like the actual alarm. So that was my bad. I guess so in private we mentioned there's a mod called GMDX or Give Me Deus Ex. Ooh. And Kranku, you mentioned that okay, for a first experience, a first evaluation of this game, this probably isn't the right thing to use, and from what I've seen, I agree. But I couldn't help but look at the list of changes and think, okay, this is actually everything I would change about the game mechanically.
I mean, you can if you want to install it.
Yeah, for
there
sure.
wouldn't be a problem with it. Like you can just like play halfway through the game and decide, well, maybe I want something else. But yeah, I think like if you want to assess the game vanilla, then GMDEX it adds a lot. It even adds like new geometry to the levels and stuff. Just like it's a great mod. Like it has a lot of attention to detail and it's clearly made by some very passionate people. And there's also a bunch of other mods like Shifted, which adds some crazy weapons, and there's even a mod which is one of my favorites that is just like it's one of those mods that's just absolute nonsense. It just completely randomizes all the text and speech in it.
That's awesome.
So like you talk to Mandalay and he's like, go in, go in, go in, go in.
Yeah, I guess like more specifically, again, I haven't sampled the changes myself, but there's stuff like okay, enemies will actually notice unconscious bodies. The range on melee weapons is expanded a little bit. I think generally enemies react to hits more and stuff. All that sounds pretty great, and I'm pretty curious to like play that for my second run maybe. Maybe just generally mechanically, does any one of y'all like have something that stuck out to them that was kind of cool or interesting about the game?
So when I was on mission 2, I think so. There's this like in the second mission, you basically get stuck in Battery Park. There's this like imagine this big park area, and there's this like little like they're trying to protect this thing in the center that has this like vaccine shipment thing. They look like radioactive canisters. I don't understand. I mean, I'm not very far in, but and I was sort of wondering on trying to find like a way in. I sort of ended up going down like there's this little like Hooverville style like homeless like community that these like the terrorists have also taken over. And in that area, I went down this vent and I came out into this like bunch of terrorists. And I just threw some TNT in there because I didn't know like another way to like get through. There's so many terrorists there. It just killed everyone, and they're like it said like, what are you doing? Primary objective completed. Blah 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 blah. Like you killed all the hostages. Blah blah. I'm like I wasn't saving hostages. Well, where am I going? I looked and I was like, wait, the objective I had to complete in the like the above ground area never got completed. I completed some objective I like never was given. And then it's in the subway station, so I get on this train and then it busted me over to Hell's Kitchen, and the brother character Paul is yelling at me about some shit. And he's talking about EMPs and shit. I still do not know what goes on in that mission because I assume I must have like sequence broken and like skipped the part where they tell you the primary objective for that mission.
Yeah,
of course I got like chewed out when I get back to base. It's like you didn't follow the orders of your commanding officer and you didn't do the secondary objective we told you to. And it's like there's unique text for it. They're just like, oh well, you know, I chose to fulfill the primary objective and focus on the hostages instead of going for the ambrosia. Blah 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 blah. I did think that was pretty neat that by just sort of stumbling around, I did get this very unique, personalized like take on the level. I thought that level in general is very like well fleshed out because there's a decent amount of primary or like secondary objectives you can take on. There's like a little hostage situation in your brother's hotel where he's staying, and there's some like some terrorists you can mop up like just running around the streets. There's also troops there that'll sort of take care of them for you, which is also that mechanic I don't really it feels a little overbearing. In fact, when I think about it now, there's another little bit of like quote unquote emergent dialogue that came out of that mission where I had walked past the original secondary objectives like the entry point for that. I didn't want to go in guns blazing. But the AI for the troops, like my allied troops, just automatically went in and started killing people. And then when I got back to the base in between missions, the JC started talking to the arms, the armory guy. That like, oh yeah, I love killing people. I killed so many people on that mission. Did you see it? It was great. And the guy was like, yeah, I'm not gonna give you any ammo.
Yes, yeah, I had the same thing. Yeah, oh my god.
You need to stop acting like a fucking like dirty Harry. Like chill the fuck out. Which to me is fine. It's like, well, I didn't actually use any of my ammo. I used very little of it, so I have plenty. Oh, and you gave me multi-tools. That's exactly what I needed. Thank you. But it is funny that through this strange sequence of events, even though I didn't actually go in there and do anything, it's still it wigged out in this weird way. I did.
Well, you say you didn't do anything, but like you had this instinct to run into a subway and throw a bomb down there.
Yeah, well, yeah, but that was for the separate. What he was talking about, he was very specifically talking about like I forget what it was called, the something castle.
The Clinton Castle, yeah.
The Clinton Castle, yeah. And I never stepped into the Clinton Castle, but JC's talking about like massacring a group of terrorists in the Clinton Castle, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even go in there. Like the part where he's talking about like, oh, you killed these hostages in the subway. I was like, oh yeah, I definitely did do that, even though I did. I never got briefed on it, so I maybe would have exerted a little more caution otherwise. But
well, if you don't go into the Clinton Castle, Navarre just runs in there and does it for you.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, I just did actually kill them, and I mean, this like for me it worked as intended, where I killed them and I got shoot out for it, and it was like, damn, I felt bad. I could have done it non-lethally.
Yeah.
I guess I mean, this is like such a standard immersive sim thing, right? But like, I mean, I think you still have to acknowledge this game, for doing this kind of shit so early. But there's when you enter the mole tunnels, there's a part where you have to blow up a section to progress. And they tell you, hey, yeah, this guy over there is like selling the lamb mines that are useful for this exact purpose. So go to him, and he charges you up the ass for it. So I'm like, okay, this is an immersive sim, so I can just knock this guy out and then take the lamb mines, because like, they would realistically be a physical item in the world that's like on his person, right? And yeah, guess what? It worked exactly like that. And I don't know, it's such a little standard immersive sim kind of interaction, but I really appreciate that level of like, that I can have faith in the knowledge that this kind of thing will work, I understand. I understand the underlying rules. What's up?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Did you want to know? Did you know that you could like do a quest for that guy?
Yeah, I found that out later. Yeah. Well, you have to kill the drug dealer, I think. Yeah, and then,
he gives you like a moral choice thing that you can do.
See, I didn't. After I got the request to kill the drug dealer, I didn't talk to the drug dealer again.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Yeah,
it's sort of a 2-for-1, because you can also, there's like a junkie in the bathroom who's like looking for the drug that the guy sells. So you could buy it off the drug dealer and give it to the guy for a lamb, or you could kill the drug dealer who gives you two vials of it, and then give one to the junkie, and then go talk to the El Reyes or whatever. It's like, okay, cool. I got two lambs for just killing this guy. Which the way he describes it, like what JC talks about, is just so like weird and cold blooded. It's sort of funny. I guess that is the bad guy way to go about that section.
Yeah, we couldn't talk about tone and stuff for a bit, because like, in a bit. I guess like really quickly I'll say like there's something very cartoonish about how the game kind of comes across, but I mean, clearly there is like a serious kind of message and like ideology in there, and it's like that weird combo of like, okay, it's absurd but it's still kind of serious, and it's kind of working for me. I'm excited to talk about that. I guess like maybe level design would be, we've already touched on it a little bit. We can talk about, we can finish it up briefly. I guess the general sense that I had is that these levels are very large, or they seem very large. They seem a little bit overwhelming. And I'm definitely not gonna get the full depth of the experience on a first pass. I'm sorta fumbling my way through as intuitively as I can, so very much with my objective in mind. and not really worrying about missing stuff. That's kind of my approach to playing right now.
Yeah.
Um,
Did you on the third mission?
yeah.
Did you find the platforming section in the
Where-
cargo?
In the cargo.
So in the what are they called? The big crates. They're
Is it where you swim through the tunnel or whatever? Or?
So no, in the plane, I kind of don't want to spoil it, but there's like this platforming section where you can jump across some cargo shipping containers, and you can get it's just a weapon modification, like it's not a big spoiler or anything, but it is fucking horrific, and I hate it. It's
I think I missed that. Yeah.
It's really terrible, like platforming, unless you have the augmentation that increases your jumping distance, which you can get by that point, but you probably won't. I hate it. So it's like, because it really frustrated me. I made a quick save there, and I just kept trying to jump into this container that's just out of reach, and eventually I got it by doing like a fucking FPS pro circle strafe in there. But, yeah,
I'm literally looking at it right now. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. I was looking, and there's a couple crates I think you can move around, but otherwise it's like, yeah, I don't think I can. I don't think I can do this, nor do I want to do this. This looks like there's definitely some. I think there's a part a little bit earlier in like that transitionary period between the between the mole tunnels and the airfield, like where Ziad mentioned there's this like swimming section you can optionally do. And there's like a part where I set up crates to jump over this like laser array to save some multi-tools, and then I ended up on the other side, and there's this like this part where you climb up over this, I don't even know what, there's just metal grating, I guess.
There's 3
some pipes there. Yeah, I mean it's like immediately after the first set of lasers you run into.
Yeah.
And when I first did it, I disabled the laser and I put a crate there so I could jump over. And then this time I tried to bring a crate over. I'm like, well, fuck, what do I do now? And so I've noticed a couple times in this game, like I just sort of jumped maybe 20 or 25 times in a row at like different angles until eventually I did get over the grating in the middle.
Wait, so is it like 3 sort of graded platforms? After like
no, this is literally like the first laser where you have like on one, it's like a forking path.
Okay.
On one side there's like a bunch of steam, and the other side is the laser. And so right next to the laser behind it is like this little like, I guess it's literally just something you mantle and climb over, right? But when I first did it, I tried a couple times. I couldn't like get the jump, so I just put a crate there and then used that as like a foothold. And then the second time, I forgot to quick save and had to redo a bunch of progress. But the second time, I was like, well, I know there's a laser later, so I want to save my multi-tools. So this first laser, I just jumped over with crates, and I forgot to bring a crate over to do the second jump over this grating, and I just had to like, I don't know, the way the physics works with the jumping in this game can be a little squirrely at times. And sometimes I can't tell what they intended for like the like if they intended something to be jumpable or not. So sometimes it's pretty obvious. Like they'll just, I put crates everywhere that you can pick up and move, which has happened a lot in these first 3 missions at least. But yeah, it's a little squirrely.
Björn, I sort of anecdotally remember you maybe struggling to warm up to old school PC level design in the past. Is this something you've thought about with this game, maybe?
Kind of like I don't know if it has something to do with the way like the technology of the time works, but I feel like a lot of PC games have these ongoing meandering levels that don't feel like a real place. Like it's just stuff placed just to have like ongoing paths and tunnels and everything. So like I've kind of felt this in the way with how big the levels are, but the structure themselves, like those feel like actual real places.
Yeah.
So I have had a much better time than compared to other games where it's just felt like going on and on and on. without much changing in between. But yeah, just to comment on the platforming, that seems also like that seems to be something PC games of that era just had to include. Like I remember the first time I played Half-Life a few years ago. Oh my god, like that game has some janky ass platforming sections, especially in the end. So I hope Deus Ex doesn't go that far.
We have one little note saying here, it's very old school in that you can stand on almost any surface. I think this goes as far as that you can plant those mines we mentioned onto the wall and then stand on the mine and then build like little ladders this way. Which is sort of sick. This is very weird aside, but like I forget which renderer it was. Right now I'm playing with the DirectX 10 renderer, but like one of them, maybe it was software, I don't know. But like if you play with one of those renderers and then have a pretty high frame rates, and then you slide off a slope, you speed up like crazy. I don't like that happened to me once randomly, and I didn't know what the fuck was going on. I'm sure there's some speedrunning tech there. Yeah, I guess just general. In general, this is like a funny anecdotal thing to say, right? But I do really appreciate the way this game sort of balances. Yeah, the more I got into it, the more I felt, okay, this feels like a really detailed, thoughtfully designed world. This feels maybe saying plausible is giving it too much credit, but I'm definitely buying into the illusion of yeah, okay, this feels like people live here. And yet at the same time it is very gamey, and I have the ability to sort of analyze the geometry in a very gamey kind of way. I can immediately say, okay, I could use this slope here in this way and this little ledge, whatever. I find that balance pretty satisfying.
Yeah, I think
a
decent amount of they go out of their way to make it believable. I'm thinking of at the start of mission 2, the kid who's wandering around, hungry. You give him some food, and he'll actually tell you oh yeah, I saw where the terrorists were coming out of this little tunnel.
Yeah.
I sort of gives you, and a lot of it is set up. It is sort of gaming like that. It's if you do something nice, you generally get some sort of thing that happens that you can, that's pertinent to your mission, right? Very rarely are there things that are completely off the cuff, right? I guess it's a decently at least funny game. I think walking into after mission 1 into the base, and that guy Gunther is he's flipping out because the fucking the soda machine gave him the wrong soda. And it's you don't talk to him, he's just standing there talking to Navarro about it. Or just they at least went out of their way to okay, even though most of the people walking around are single line NPCs or people who give you shit, they still bother at least sometimes make them feel oh, okay, they actually have an internal life outside of you.
Yeah.
Which is
nice. Can you choose which kind of food that kid to give at mission 2?
I gave him a candy bar because that's what I had in my person, and there was a voiced line about it. It's all I've got is a candy bar.
I was I only have this candy bar. It's it doesn't matter. I just want to fall asleep. It's damn.
Poor kid.
I guess maybe yeah. So I briefly teased that we're gonna talk about the themes and all that. We don't want to go into too much detail because there's a pretty drastic difference in our progress still in our round. There's some pretty big developments sort of right before what I played. But I did think it was interesting just how hard the game pushes the pragmatism versus pacifism angle early on. You work for the UNATCO, right? You're this anti-terrorist, well, not necessarily an anti-terrorist organization, but because there's a terrorist uprising in New York or in the US right now, you're going against it. And those troops in your fucking unit or whatever, they're just the most bloodthirsty motherfuckers. They're constantly telling you to just shoot these terrorists down, no questions asked. Whereas your brother, who is this mentor figure who has been with Yunako for a long time, he has this, like, clearly he has this very inspirational, aspirational character, and he's like very directly encouraging you to, hey, like, maybe be a little non-lethal, maybe take some tear gas instead, blah blah blah. And then there's other characters, like we mentioned the military sort of equipment guy, who will reprimand you if you go too ham. So I was kind of, I didn't know much about sort of the themes and the tone of the game before I played, and just how ham it went on that kind of surprised me. Because, like, it's not like, it's sort of interesting because maybe I'll feel this as well, but I feel like in a game like MGS3, for example, I couldn't really tell you a specific thing that it does, but it feels like because lethality versus non-lethality is like so baked into that game's, MGS3's mechanics, with all the enemies having like stamina and health as separate concepts, right? It inherently feels like, okay, I'm fucking up, or the game is telling me I'm fucking up if I didn't go non-lethal, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in Deus Ex, it doesn't really feel like a push from the game itself or from the mechanics.
I think I know what you mean, because it's more like a narrative distinction. Because
exactly, yeah.
It's the people who are really bloodthirsty at Yunako and not the people who are on the ground with you. I mean, Navarre and Gunter are quite ruthless in their violence, and Mandalay and Walter Simons are very focused on attaining power and attaining. They'll do it by any means necessary. But the guy you speak to on comms is very reticent to become violent. The armory general is not into violence. The guy who does the med bay stuff is not into it. They're all kind of chill. So I think it's more of a delineation between like a narrative structure. It's more like you think about the choices you're making rather than like, you're fucking up if you don't do it stealthily. It's just, it says something about like you as the way you're playing. And I also think there's some sort of like hypocritical moments towards it. I can't speak too much without spoiling it, but maybe Paul isn't exactly the role model that he presents himself, or maybe he makes choices that aren't so great as well. But like I'm currently working on like this sort of hypothesis thesis that Deus Ex is a bit of a reactionary game. And when I know it sounds silly, but when I say that, I don't mean I dislike it because it's like conservative. I don't actually think that's the case, but what I'm trying to sort of get across is that Deus Ex necessarily resists this sort of influence of social progress, where characters and factions are sort of reacting to the loss of like this post-political world around them. So like you can't, Yunako and the people in power are not like here to improve people's lives. Like they're rather potently actually very hostile to people. And the game just won't give you any tools to like remedy this. It's going to present you with like a series of individual reactions to this world, and it's very utterly bleak. I think it's more bleak than like the other games in the series, because it's just like everything is just people's character models are very dirty. Everything's just devastated by poverty and illness. And like the way it's structured, it sort of reminds me of like New Vegas, where it doesn't matter who you side with, but there's like no option of siding with the really cool syndicalist group or like the followers of the apocalypse. But Deus Ex goes even further, in my opinion, that they're like, there isn't even a faction that's like that. There's no people vying for a movement of like solidarity. It's all just individual focused reactions and stuff. So that's how I think like the violence is contextualized in Deus Ex. It's like, it's not really a gameplay assessment. It's more of like a philosophical thing.
Yeah.
Please excuse my rant.
Oh no, you're totally good. That was good.
I feel like I have my own thoughts on this, but I just still need to play more. I could sort of see. I don't know. I think part of it, I still need to get a better sense of what the NSF is like. But yeah, they are sort of portrayed as like, it's like almost what I don't know, because there's some people you can talk to who mention that like the NSF used to be more of like a grassroots like resistance movement. and it's sort of been like corrupted, right? But there's not with most of these people having like very short dialogue clips. It's hard to like get a good sense of that. It's also funny how many like you'll just run into someone and they're like, oh yeah, I used to lead the NSF. They're like, no, you fucking did. Why are you bumming around here then? Like, oh, I actually started the mole people. It's like, then why aren't you like with them right now? There's so many mole people down there. Like, even though the NSF is down there, you could, it's very funny because you don't really get to like explore them because there's no like, I guess there's occasional dialogue tree stuff, but it's very light, right? It doesn't appear very often. It would be sort of nice to have like more of that fleshed out in the dialogue because they do have multiple dialogue lines, Raph. I hate old games.
So I will say, in regards to the NSF, there's two pieces of like really critical lore that you can find in either terminals or notes that like it sort of makes them map more neatly onto like real life fascist militias, like more like Boogaloo Boys or 3%ers. They're almost like neo-Confederates in a sort of way. It's interesting that they're holed up in like Castle Clinton. But I know I don't want to get too deep into it, but like they have this sort of like nationalist core to them, and they're also this is a thing I'm going to talk about because it's quite cool. But there's a part where you can go into the UNATCO HQ and you can look on the public terminal, and it explains that the catalyst for the formation of the NSF was what the game calls the sporting weapon restriction. It's like a very sort of obvious send-up of like liberal weasel-worded gun control legislation, and the implication is like, well, the deep state is controlling everything, so they're essentially dismantling the Second Amendment, so citizens don't need to protect themselves and they don't need a firearm for recreation. And whatever you think of like gun control, it's like this plausible thing that this tyrannical shadow government would impose this sort of measure on people, but it's also very plausible that like an American militia would see this as a catalyst for their uprising, because like this is just a very central belief of like armed groups, is that the government is going to take their guns away or whatever. So it's got historical precedence in other groups as well, like Black Power groups in the 20th century. But it's like being opposed to gun control doesn't necessarily make you a reactionary person, but a lot of people, like reactionaries, do care about gun control. And I think the NSF particular only exist because they're a reaction to this particular legislation. So if you're kind of expecting them to be like this sort of piece of like camaraderie or shared solidarity, it's kind of naive. They are anti-government extremists, and they operate largely on a desire of like not building a new nation, but as a grievance with their current nation. But this is why I really like the choices in Deus Ex. Like, I really, really like that the game gives you just enough tidbits of world building that I can come up with a fucking Alex Jones thesis like this, and I can just run with it. I think it's something that like the IDOS Montreal sequels don't really do as effectively. And I find it amazing that we can just go through this like 20-year period of changing cultural values, and yet Deus Ex is just sort of very attuned and to the current discourse.
Totally.
I will say that I'm curious to see how this is like. This is like a pre 9/11 game, right? Especially for American audience.
Oh my god, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is like the way we perceive like I guess like the kind of groups we have now. Not that there's like I think broadly we don't have like leftist paramilitary groups and like in the modern day, at least in like the developed world and even most of the like third world, right? But I am curious to see like how that sort of shapes the outlook of this game, because like especially to me this like kind of bleakness is very indicative of like sort of like 90s into history, or even like sort of Nick Landish like style of like philosophy, where the philosophy is just that it's like humanity's going to get obliterated, right? So not that I have anything deep to tie that to Deus Ex with, but I am curious to see how that like spools out over the course of this.
I think because the game's so cyberpunk that when they think of the game, they think of it in terms of like Blade Runner or Neuromancer, but it's not really true. It's more focused on, because it's more focused on trends from the late 90s. It's more focused on military technology and a grounded view of future and conspiracy. You know, it's not like JC Denton is in Neo Tokyo eating noodles in a rainy bar or something. They don't have to make things up. They just sort of take current trends to their natural conclusion.
Yeah, I guess like to like grossly simplify a lot of what you guys talked about. I do really like this ultimate takeaway that even though a lot of the stuff isn't pushed mechanically, it's purely narratively, I still thought about it while playing. I still thought about it in my actions. Like I personally again, even though the terrorists that you shoot and all that stuff, they're paper thin, they're not real characters, blah blah. I still felt sort of okay, this is like, it's really unnecessary to kill them. I should go out of my way to actually you know, preserve life here. I find it I'm honestly a little surprised that the game is so successful in that way. Yeah.
The game makes it like deliberately hard to like, you know, be non-lethal.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
Pan described. Like you can't go down into a subway full of guys and just prod them to death. You threw TNT down there, you fuck them up.
Yeah. And I guess like that level of realism, I think, makes it sort of more potent, right? Well, maybe realism is like the bad word for it, but like
verisimilitude.
Yeah. I guess that's a good note to end on. Yeah, I'm excited to sort of see where it goes, and like we can go full tinfoil hat in episode 3 of the pod. And yeah, I'm
putting
also
soylent in the water.
I'm also just really interested to see how the mechanics and the level design and all that kind of evolves. Does anyone have like closing thoughts?
It is a lot better than I thought it would be. I was ready to go in 6 out of 10. But this has been a lot of.
I could kind of tell.
It's been a lot of fun so far.
Yeah.
Especially after the I think the last couple, like, this is probably the most fun I had since Shenmue playing one of these. I mean, Phantom Dust was fun too, but that also came with like, it's fun in multiplayer, right? That's a big caveat. This is just like, oh, okay, I could see myself sitting down for 2 or 3 hours a day and rolling through this.
This feels like a book club game, kind of.
Yeah, for sure.
I was playing till like 3 a.m. last night, and I really actually had to tear myself away from it. Like I really didn't expect that.
Stealth is a lot easier than I remember. Kind of surprised at like how a lot of these enemy patrols are built for easy stealth, which is not what I remember at all. I remember like forcing you into combat, but I'm actually like deep in the game, not getting saved. So that'll be interesting to see how the final level holds up.
Yeah, I don't have that comparison point yet, but like, especially, I mean, we talked about a little bit that, especially in level 1, it feels like, okay, maybe this is even like trying to ease you into stealth because it's spreading the enemy so far apart, and like, again, they're not very intelligent and all that. It's very, even if you fuck up a little bit, it's easy to sort of slip back into stealth. And I don't really mind that, honestly. Yeah, it's pretty fun.
I was surprised that I could just, in the subway section where it's like all these terrorists that are like impossible to like sneak kill, you can just walk behind them and go into the subway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's how you stealth through it now. Okay, I understand now. Good game though. Good game.
Very good game.
So Ryan, I saw your Discord status the other day, and it said you were playing this little game on Steam called DEUS EX Game of the Year Edition. And you know what that means?
Oh.
You abandoned the plan.
Oh.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
What the fuck, man?
I would like to publicly state that I do regret this decision, purely because if I really had been playing on PlayStation 2, where the load times were not 1 second, then I would not have been save scumming constantly, and I could have enjoyed the video game.
You're so right. I think that's that tells us that the PS2 version actually is closer to the original intent, you know, because you can't save scum like that, you know.
Are we gonna do a like a save counter check? I will practice radical vulnerability. I had 900 saves.
I saw that. I saw that. And I thought
900
that's
saves.
insane. How that I mean, I had like I think by the end I had 12 hours. So like I think I had 4 hours less than you, and
Yeah.
400 saves.
I just love autosaving.
Yeah, that's. I still thought that's like when I was playing it, I thought I was like the biggest save scummer on earth here. Like I thought I was going so crazy.
There's
It's
an old
probably still a
Max
lot.
Payne review on Backlog written by Wadaba, where they were talking about how like with the whole like sort of like pulpy filmic thing the game's going for, like quick saves are basically like adding cuts in a movie, right?
Yeah, I
So
remember
this is basically this is basically my film debut. I was getting the dailies, rolling them back. I need to make sure I had everything sequenced perfectly. That's what I was telling myself anyway.
Alan, I think you actually did play a good amount of the PS2 version, right?
Yeah, while mildly inebriated the whole time.
Too many 40s.
You would probably agree that it clears, right?
God didn't invent the typewriter to play video games. That's what the controller's for. So yeah, it rolls and smokes.
But like I guess compared to your also relatively recent experience with the PC version, how did you feel like, okay, is this like a viable way to play Deus Ex in all seriousness?
So like and I wasn't here for last session, so I didn't get to talk about too much of my experience with the PC version. But I remember hearing like that I was gonna like there was a lot of jank I was gonna run to and that I was gonna hate. And I remember playing the PC version and being like, oh, you know what? That wasn't that bad. I'm big chillin'. And I played the PS2 version and had the exact same thought. I feel like if you're going back to play Deus Ex, you might as well play the PC version. But like if you're if you're a funny little guy, you know the PS2 version ain't bad. It's also a really funny bit to run. So like
Yeah, I'm disappointed in myself that I didn't persevere. You know, I succumbed to the peer pressure. But also, I mean, yeah, in seriousness, like it is obviously like the legacy of this game obviously is very closely attached to the PC, and like the PC-ness of it didn't really turn me off by the end, right? I thought it was cool as well. I think in our group, John, you're probably the first one to finish, right? What was your overall feelings of the game?
Bad. No, I thought it was weird. It was like kind of like a roller coaster. It was like, all right, this is kind of and then it was like, oh, this is getting a little bit better when you get to like, I think the end of like Act 1 or the end of New York, Hong Kong and the shipyard I didn't like at all, and then Paris I liked a lot more. And I think it ended. I enjoyed the ending. I've continued to think that like, it's kind of a slog. It gets to a point where like there was a critical mass of like anonymous military corridors right at the very end. 'Cause you go to Vandenberg in the Ocean Lab in Area 51, and it was like, okay, I think I wrote this in the Google Docs, but like I think I would have enjoyed the game a little bit more if those were like faction specific. You kind of made a choice, and then you went off to your own sort of exclusive final area.
Yeah, I have some thoughts on that. I definitely love to talk a little more about the ending. I'll say for myself, like I finished literally just before we started recording. I was constantly looking at the clock, you know, like racing against the clock. I really was JC Denton, you know, when I was running through Area 51. Spoiler, by the way.
We gotta have a Zeod close call counter. It's like eco this Phantom Dust.
Oh my god! Yeah. Oh. I got it on I played, you know. Alpaca, you I think you didn't finish, but
I did not come close to finishing.
Yeah, I'm still curious, like sort of are you interested in sticking with the game? Were you compelled by what you saw thus far?
Yeah, so I got the part I got through. What is it? You get captured and you have to break out of the Majestic 12 base. That's where
that's pretty
I did that
early,
part. Yeah, it was good. I don't know, maybe we can talk about this more, but like I don't know. On the first level, I was really, really not feeling it. I don't know. I was like, I was kind of, I was, yeah, I was kind of like, oh god, is the whole if the whole game is gonna be like this? Well, I don't know if I'm gonna do this, but it got better, and then I probably will keep playing it. I think the level design really kind of gets better the further
Yeah,
you go, even so.
and I think kind of
Which,
makes or breaks the game in a way.
yeah, well, that's pretty much the whole sort of point of the game.
Yeah,
So yeah, it was cool. I'll probably keep playing it. It's
yeah.
cool.
I was trying to convey that same sense in our first, or I think our second session. That first level does not really give a great impression of the game. It yeah, we already talked about the AI being like insanely dumb and how it doesn't really show it in its best light when you have these really spacious, not even really designed feeling environments.
Yeah, it's just so I don't know. It's like I don't know. It's one of those things where they probably that was the first thing. That was like the first thing they designed, or one of the earliest thing they designed,
Yeah.
and then they just did it the game, in order or whatever. Which I'm sure that didn't literally happen, but like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's just not. It's so it doesn't really take advantage of all the like, yeah, of all the systems when you have these really open levels that that are that you kind of just like do really janky stealth walk through or like have very fixed paths and so
Yeah.
There was I think it was like an interview or something where they were talking about like the first, I think one of the first levels they did like that never got added was like a White House level, and it was literally just the floor plan for the White House that you were sneaking around, and they had sort of the same thing where it was like, oh yeah, we made this like so true to life that it's actually not really a fun game level. I sort of feel like Statue of Liberty is the same way. Like I've never been to a Statue of Liberty. I don't know how like actually close it is, but the fact that they were like, we want to have this big, like sort of like real life thing at the very head of the game. We're just like, you can't just sort of put that in and then expect like, oh, I'm gonna plop a bunch of guards around, and especially since they sort of spoil it for you. It's like, hey, if you go around the back, you just sort of walk in, and it's yeah. I think later on they do a much better job sort of welding like a realistic feeling, right? It's like you actually feel like you're in some sort of real place, but at the same time they actually design some fucking levels around it.
Yeah, Pang, you posted your review for the game on Backlog today, and it goes into that a lot. I think I would even say that the Liberty Island level mostly is not very reflective of the later level design. You still get stretches where, okay, you just have an insanely long tunnel with like a really nice clear shot at the enemy that you're about to silent sniper rifle,
Yeah.
I got up to I think the third sniper rifle upgrade, and it's so insane. Like you just play cookie clicker at that point.
Yeah, it's over, dude. It's so funny that they bothered to like with the pistol, they're like, you can't put a silence on the pistol. We'll give you a separate stealth pistol that deals less damage. I'm like, oh, wow, these are really good game designers. What is the silencer used for? Then it's like the fucking sniper rifle and the assault rifle. It's like, oh, there's so many things like, because I got so much assault rifle ammo because everyone carries it. And at a certain point in the game, it's like if I was running low on sniper rifle stuff, or I was like in close range, I would just like walk into the door of a room and kill everyone with the silenced assault rifle, and it just mows them all down, and then no one else hears it because it's fucking silent. It's so funny. It's literally the first shot out of the assault rifle is a little pew like you'd get out of a silencer, right? And then the rest is literally just inaudible.
Yeah.
It's just you see the clip, the fucking casings fly out of the gun with no sound. It's like, why did they fucking design it like that? Why did they even put a silencer in the game? I do not get it. It is very funny though. It made it a lot easier. So
yeah, I can say the more I played, the more I did come across really clever scenarios where, for example, you would have sort of a corner, kind of like a kind of twisting circular room or something, and they would put a man in black, which they explode on death, right? Next to a bunch of other enemies, or maybe next to a bunch of hostages or civilians. I think we've talked about how the simulation and again the AI is not as polished or as complex as it could be. But when you put those things in really close proximity, that's where the game shines. And I really got that again from your review, Penguin.
I didn't say it in my review, but one of my funniest, the fucking laser tripwires were actually my most annoying barrier, right? I don't remember if I know we talked about this offline some, but it's sort of confusing to tell which ones you can block with crates and which ones you can't. So I had plowed so many fucking upgrades into the heavy carrying things augment, because they give you so many upgrade canisters earlier in the game, but you don't really have that many augmentations. So I'm just trying to clean them out of my inventory. And so I try to solve a lot of them with those no dice. But very late in the game, in the missile silo area at the end of mission 12, a man in black walked up. He ran up to me, and I'm like hiding behind this crate I put there. And he's like, there's laser tripwires in the way. I'm like, fuck, I don't know how to deal with this. So I was like, okay, let me just kill him first. I killed him. His explosion blew up the laser generators. And and I was like, oh, well, I guess I solved this puzzle. And I just waltzed through. The fact that I still had a bunch of a decent amount of scenarios late into the game that's taught me something new about the systems, I think is a big one on their part. Even if it's very I don't want to say it's hokey, but you can see the seams very easily otherwise. Yeah. But they somehow managed to keep coming up with scenarios that would create this sort of emergent things that happen. I did find that very entertaining.
Yeah, I can't say it always results in a way where it's necessarily the most challenging or the most sort of strategic it could be, right? Especially I had so many augmentations that I just didn't use for half the game, like the fast sprint or the health regen, right? But then I would notice little moments, with the fast sprints, I can do a little long jump basically and then jump over some tripwires. Or there was a section very close to the end where I assume you have to get past the turrets to activate some terminal to draw out this bridge. Or you can just jump over it with the fast sprint, right? That's what I did. And yeah, it's not it's hokey that I sort of skipped this challenge, but it still felt kind of cool,
Was it the part with there's the big spider robot at the bottom and
yes.
up an elevator?
Yeah, that's the one.
I did not know there was a bridge there. I just fucking just jumped across it. There was because also the that augment gives you you can fall from higher places.
Oh,
so there's a bunch,
I didn't realize that.
There's a similar area in the 13 in Area 51 where there's a big spider robot at the bottom, and then the blast doors. I guess those are the blast doors in this Sector 4 or whatever. And you're supposed to go down this winding staircase, and there's a couple of snipers and a couple of smaller spiders in the big spider. But there's an overhang onto this big. It's maybe 4 floors you can fall down. I didn't want to go through this toxic section with a bunch of aliens, so I just crouched under the I crouched under the railing, and I turned on I turned on the speed enhancement and then the synthetic heart to upgrade it, and I just fell down. And I know they intended for you to be able to do that because they put a pipe that's maybe 1 floor down, up from the ground, and if you fall on that, you can actually walk over it and skip the fucking spider and just jump down right in front of the blast doors. I was like, this is so fucking sick. Of course, you have to go back up the normal way when you come back later if you do the new Dark Age ending. But I still found that to be quite. They accounted for a lot of that shit. It was very impressive.
So Raph, you're one of our participants who revisited the game, and I think you mentioned that you had sort of in your memory the games felt very different than on this playthrough, but you still enjoyed it, right?
Well, yeah, it's still great, but it's. I always thought of it as the pragmatic immersive sim, right? The immersive sim where you're actually making very tactical considerations, tactical trade-offs between your items, between your resources, and it's pretty easy to break actually. Whoops. Shoutouts to the sniper and the grenades and the sword.
The grenades are the grenades are the Swiss Army knife of this game. Door, grenade, enemy, grenade, tripwire, grenade. It's funny.
Yeah, I mean, especially in comparison to Prey. My remember having this conversation with Durandal however long ago about Prey versus Deus Ex, and like, oh well, Prey gives you like a bajillion grenades, and it kind of like breaks the game, and it just destroys all the traversal puzzles, right? But then playing Deus Ex, and it's like, well, you have a sniper rifle that opens doors, and you have like hundreds of sniper bullets, and it's like, well, they're both pretty messed up.
I'm actually this is sort of semi-related, but would you say there's an immersive sim style game that sort of gives you kind of the Deus Ex experience, but isn't so busted that maybe is a little more balanced?
I was gonna say Dead Rising, but it's busted too.
I mean, the only ones I can think of are like
Maybe
roguelikes,
roguelikes, okay.
such as Moon Crash, Rogue, whatever random ass free to play roguelike you can find. You know, just.
I mean, that kind of game benefits from being on a grid and turn-based and not like, you know.
Yeah, that's the issue. Moon Crash, hey.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, there's just something so uniquely compelling about it being a real-time world, right? But then I get that just makes it just so much shit is gonna slip through the cracks. Yeah.
I do feel like if there was like I was looking at the difficulty scaling, and it's literally just a scaling on how much damage you take. Like I think realistic just makes it so like you're weaker than most NPCs, which is funny.
That was a big thing. I was misremembering how difficulty worked in this game. Right, so I was remembering System Shock 2's difficulty scaling, where they overhauled the entire economy, where they actually like changed the level design, but like that's not Deus Ex. Nope.
That was exactly what I was about to say. Is like I played on hard because I think I started, and John told me, he's like, yeah, I played on hard, so I felt like I had to, right? And the game was not hard at all. I mean, obviously I save scum a lot, but at the same time, it was like most of this is very like. As long as I know what's going on, it's like sort of easy to solve, right? And sort of puzzle-like in that way. But by the end of the game, and I said this in my review as well, is like the economy like is just imploded. Because if you're jumping between every style, like as you go through, which the game sort of like seems like it intends on you doing, because it often doesn't give you like a particular. You can't just choose one style and go through the whole game with it. You have to sort of bounce between. So it becomes more about like managing your resources between the different like ways you can solve each challenge. But if you are bouncing between, like, they'll just give you enough of each resource that by the end of the game it's like, okay, well, I have 15 lockpicks, I have so many multi-tools that I can't even pick any more up. I have like unlimited ammo on every single weapon. I have 10 grenades, 10 of each kind of grenade. And it's like it sort of comes down to like every single puzzle solution is more like, especially since, you know, like Ziad, I was also trying to get it done pretty late. I was like, what is the fastest way I can solve this situation, unless like, what is the most meaningful decision long term I can make? Because there's no fucking decision making long term. If on realistic or hard they actually like dialed back the economy, it could have been different. But also, you know, a lot of this game is the fun is exploration. So part of me just exploring everywhere and like poking every nook and cranny, I sort of was just picking up gobs and gobs of stuff that maybe I wouldn't have picked up if I was just like beelining to the next destination or whatever.
Yeah, I'll say sort of this element of, okay, I'm rummaging through an environment and just pressing X to collect resources or whatever. Like you've seen a lot of modern games like The Last of Us or something. In Deus Ex, that never really lost its appeal to me, because I really felt like there was never a point where they stopped putting effort into environments. It always felt very plausible and very I think, like you said in your review as well, Pang, like, just this very nice mix of, yeah, it's an engaging game, but also, they still blend in sort of the realism.
I think I was literally just thinking Last of Us because it sort of came to me as well. The fucking that whole game is like you go into people's rooms who have like evacuated because of the zombie apocalypse or the whatever the fungal infection shit is, and it's all like you're supposed to feel like sad for this. Like it's really trying to make you feel bad for these people while you're also just robbing their shit blind, right? Like at least here it's like it's almost entirely like scientists or like military people, and it's like, yeah, I'm a fucking like spy assassin thief guy. Like, of course I'm gonna be fucking with their shit. The dissonance is less pronounced, I think.
Yeah.
Which makes it more engaging long term.
I guess maybe I would probably move on to kind of talk about the game's final couple scenarios and maybe also the ending, unless one of you guys wants to mention anything else, like sort of about the gameplay experience specifically. That's
I do want to just touch on something in regards to Pang's review, which is a really good review. And it's in regards to when you were talking about the disabling of the cameras, because I didn't realize until earlier that you are actually invulnerable when you go on the security pads, which is really funny. I assumed that you weren't, and you're not actually. When you're in like a computer interface or like an ATM interface, you're not. You can still be attacked, but for some reason that doesn't apply to security terminals. I don't know why.
Yeah, we talked about this earlier.
Like
it's very strange.
Yeah, it's like unevenly applied. Because in the final area, when I was getting mobbed by all of the little like the weird mutant monster things on the bottom floor, there's like a security bot that you're like obviously supposed to turn on, and then it just fucking eviscerates everything for you, and then you can close off this generator, and then okay, cool, floor's clear. But the first couple times I tried that, I was like, oh, well, as long as I get over to the terminal without anything hitting me, I'll just turn on the bot and then I'm good. Nope, I kept dying while I was like at the terminal.
Yeah.
But I know from early in the game, and like they were in that bunker 3 section I mentioned in my review, I definitely ran to the terminal and exploited the invulnerability. And I can hear all these rocket guys in the back like bogey sighted, I'm checking my sonars, like shit like that. And they can see me, but they aren't hitting me. And I know they aren't because the rocket would kill me in like 1 or 2 hits. So I do not know how that's applied. I think it's sort of the same thing as the laser tripwires, where it's like, who fucking knows sometimes.
So the mod I used...
Sorry, carry on.
I should have mentioned. I also should have mentioned this when I said I used a mod called DEUS EX Transcended, which is like it's a bunch of it's a lot of slew of just minor tweaks, and like looking through the list, it's like sort of basic stuff. It's like, okay, they fixed a lot of like jank stuff that, you know, like, okay, they don't like if they see an unconscious body in the middle of the game, they don't get alerted. And it's like, okay, that's dumb. It fixes a lot of stuff like that. And one of them is with this mod on realistic difficulty. It says using a computer no longer makes the player invisible. So I think if you're not considered, like, you know, they can't see you.
That's strange.
But presumably you can still take damage, I guess.
So I guess if they're alerted and they think that you're there, but they haven't like started locking on, then you're safe, which is so fucking stupid.
Yeah, it's sort of obvious. It's sort of obviously like a jank thing to me, where it's like, yeah, okay.
And I don't think the animals have the same sort of like alert state. Like they'll sort of just turn to you. I don't fucking know. I think you fight so few of them that it's sort of just like that last area and a couple like other minor portions. But I don't know. It's very, very strange mechanic, and it sort of ruins that particular part of the. There's no trade off there because, I mean, the other issue I know others have brought up is most of the terminals, you know, they're just in the open. Like I think I said in my review, for every 1 camera I turned off on purpose, there were 4 I turned off on accident that I just never had to engage with.
Yeah, I think Rafi mentioned.
And part of that's like,
that like a lot of the security panels, they're like placed before the thing that you're turning off. So there's nothing like precarious about like trying to even get to it. This is very strange.
This was something I was thinking of, is like they should have made it so like, I don't know, disabling cameras is like a more temporary affair, because you can think of it as like I guess the in-universe explanation is they're like automated cameras or whatever, but it's like a CCTV system, so you should be able to like disable a camera, and then your hacking ability should be like, oh, you get 30 seconds or 60 seconds of camera-free looting or something, and then it like the camera reboots, or just something to have like a way so that like you can be caught off guard in an area where like you can't reach the actual console, because sometimes the console is just like placed underneath the camera, and it's like, what's the point in even putting a camera here? And then like if you level up your if you level up your hacking enough, you can have like some diegetic explanation. It's like, oh, you learned how to loop recording footage or something, and you could permanently disable a camera. Or you could have it like Metal Gear Solid, where the camera notices you, or you destroy the camera, and then it sends like a team to investigate or something.
Yeah, I was literally about to say, like, Metal Gear Solid, like, way back in the day when I wrote about MGS2, like, the big thing I highlight about that game's stealth system is that everything is, like in how to put it? It's like, it's basically timer-based under the hood, right? And so whenever you, like, even, like, take out a body or something, like, within some period of time, like, 90 to, like, 120 seconds, like, eventually they will figure out and, like, go into some sort of alert, or at least, like, start trying to sniff you out, right? I think that's a big issue with this game's stealth like system in general, is that there's just none of that. Like, as soon as someone's handled, they're fucking done. You don't ever have to worry about them again. Even like dead bodies, like there are a couple times I hit dead bodies, but for the most part, it's like if another guard found the dead body and started looking around, that's probably good for me because then they're off the regular path, right? Like there's very little consequence for any of your actions that would necessitate that kind of like intervention on the guards, and I find that to be a little underwhelming. Luckily, there's a lot of other game to back up the stealth, but if there wasn't, it would be quite clear how insufficient of a system it is.
See, that's a very interesting comparison because it makes me wonder, okay, how much of this is owed to Deus Ex trying to be this very systemic, consistent kind of world, right? Where I'm just imagining their philosophy and their approach must have been, okay, there has to be like some kind of internal logic or a reason for every single NPC, every single enemy to be here. And if we introduce some kind of system that, like an MGS2 just infinitely spawns in enemies, technically speaking, that would sort of break that logic. I don't know if they thought about it that way, but this kind of
actually they actually did that for System Shock 2, where they would just infinitely respawn enemies when you're not looking. And that was
okay.
Not great.
See, I
I
think
don't know if they have to be like infinitely respawning, or just like you blew up the camera and therefore you've alerted someone from a different sector of the map, so they come over. But if you've killed everyone in the entire map, then quite frankly, you deserve to just not get noticed.
See, like, MGS5 is interesting because it also has that, like, I think that's systemic kind of ideal to it. And then the way they do it is like, well, all the bases are part of the same game world. And then if you clear out one base, they will just literally call in enemies from another nearby base, and they will actually physically move through the world. That's still so insane to me, and I mean, clearly there's like 15 years between those two games, between Deus Ex and MGS5. So yeah, but I really feel like if they want to solve this, they would probably want to solve it in that kind of way.
Well, I will say, I mean, I'm going to talk a bit about the sequels later, but Human Revolution sort of changed this a little bit to have full security rooms that were patrolled by guards. So you had a trade-off of like taking out one or two humans and then going out of your way to disable the entire security suite, which is good. I don't know if it'll work in this game because it makes stealth like way too strong, and it sort of removes like the fun of actually blowing cameras up with the Gep gun or grenades.
I think unless anyone has like any more points sort of in that vein, I would probably move on to the finale and all that.
I just have one quick thing. Just in regards to kind of the level design stuff, I think this is kind of a thing emblematic of this time period, because I know you all were talking about how like the game kind of has this balance between like somewhat plausible like representation of real locations, but relatively dense gameplay oriented structure. And I think that is in large part because the graphics of the time are like so sort of abstract and simple.
Yeah.
It lets you make like now if you look at like level designs are just this massive undertaking that requires so many people to all be highly organized, whereas back then the iteration time is much faster, and it just lets you get away with a lot more stuff. I think that that I mean, you probably, even if you compare to like Human Revolution, it's sort of obvious. Like You know, it's not as easy to try to go for that stuff anymore. I think now that technology has quote moved on unquote.
Yeah. It's such a memed kind of talking point, right? Like I think I can see a lot of people sort of roll their eyes at like, oh my god, like fucking stop asking for PS2 games to come back. Well, it's not gonna happen. But like, I mean, genuinely, you are right. It's this very frustrating sort of catch-22 of, okay, the industry has convinced the audience that we need games to be this fucking detailed and like this high fidelity, and then that has all these like insane repercussions. Like I don't know if I have a like great point there, but it's just like it's just frustrating.
It's just a good just a good example of it.
Yeah.
Just because it's so reliant on the level design, it's sort of very obvious.
Like,
and it's kind of right smack dab in that time period of like I consider it like the golden age of level design, unquote.
Yeah, and there's on a very technical level, there's nothing stopping the industry from still making games on that fidelity level. You could probably do it way more easily, right? Yeah. Ugh. Yeah, okay. I don't have a great transition from this sad point. I guess I'll just say I really like the way the game ramps up toward the end. So I guess maybe to go off of what John touched on a little bit. You go to Area 51 and then JC. I'm skipping all the fucking nuance and story up to that point, but whatever. He has 3 insanely world-altering choices, and they basically come up in that moment, and you have to decide on the fly what you're gonna do. And it's like, it feels very chaotic and messy, but that's kind of exactly what I liked about it. John, I'm kind of curious about your thoughts about how on how the game sort of developed up to that point, and how you were overall, if you were overall maybe satisfied or dissatisfied with how it wraps itself up.
I think the reason I was thinking about that was more like pacing. I like the kind of the way that you have all these parties that are like telling you to like shape the world in this way or that way.
Yeah.
But it just you get to this like 3-hour stretch of this final area, and it lacks I think some of the like the social element that the early game has, where it's like you're dealing with some of these heady ideas, even in like Liberty Island, but then you get to go walk around Hell's Kitchen and was it Clinton Island or Battery Park?
Yeah.
And it's like it's interesting seeing like, okay, we're talking about this in some sort of stuffy bureaucratic setting, and then you're kind of seeing how your actions or how like the actions of these different agencies are affecting the world. And I think the end of the game kind of lacks some of that. And so I think it was like, well, if you made the choice to go shut off the communication system for the new Dark Age, and then you went to Ocean Lab and you saw like here is an area that's been like removed from the grid, and you got kind of a sense of like, where's the world going to head? Like, it's kind of like a denouement of like, where's the world going to head with the choice that I've made. That was the main reason. And I also feel like this game, it has a lot of like moment to moment, like granular gameplay decisions. But I was sort of surprised going into this how like there are some major narrative ones that feels like you should have more direction in. And so I think like, okay, that's probably one of the more like, actionable or possible things they could have done. And I was also thinking things like, it would be cool if there was like an NSF ending where at the very beginning you had the option to like go and raid Liberty Island. Like you talk to the guy in the Statue of Liberty, and it's like you have the option to go like, oh, I want to join up with you guys. And then you like go and just kill manually, and you have some like, one extra mission, and then you go like get kind of kick back out to the main menu.
Yeah, I honestly like on that level, I totally feel what you're saying. I would even go as far as to say like it felt kind of exhausting in that way, that it was this really long stretch of back-to-back missions with none of those social breaks that you were kind of used to up to that point. And yeah, I think so. A couple of y'all are saying in the chat as well that the way it wraps the way those actual endings happen. I only saw the one that I picked, but I imagine the rest are similar, where it literally wraps itself up in like 30 seconds, and then you see a quote, and then credits roll. And when those choices are offered to JC, you're right that he doesn't really. For example, again, one of the endings that you mentioned, the Dark Age ending, where you're basically causing this economic collapse by destroying all forms of global communication. You know, yeah. Oh yeah, Frank, do you want to say something?
No, yeah. So I kind of want to just like say that I like how abrupt the endings are, and I like that you don't actually get to see the consequences of what you've done. And I also personally picked the Dark Age ending because, you know, in my mind, it allows for some measure of truth and knowledge to be spread amongst these downtrodden people that you met in Hell's Kitchen and throughout the game. But you know, the game won't give you that. Like, it's really funny to me that when you take the Dark Age ending, that Tracer Tom calls you up and say, like, wow, JC, that's so cool. We can all live in villages now. It's like, I feel like I haven't set in motion this uprising against the Illuminati, but I've just come up with some like libertarian feudal fantasy of like being the subject of a chieftain. Like, I think that Deus Ex is like makes the correct choice to not elaborate on what happens, because the state of the world isn't really that important, and it probably won't pan out like Tracer Tong or the Illuminati or Bob Page all think that it will. And well, we know it don't, but we know it doesn't because Invisible War exists and makes everything canon. But whatever. But I think it's just like more about what you want to do in that moment and what you would do in that setting. And I think it's in contrast to, well, I talk about New Vegas, but you know, like the slideshow at the end of New Vegas, it tells you the choices of all the fate of all the characters that you've met. Deus Ex doesn't want to give you that. Like, it doesn't want to give you closure and everything, and I think that's good. I don't think you should be permitted to have like the happy ending. I think that like Human Revolution made the mistake. I keep going on about this. I'm very sorry, but like it made the mistake. It made the mistake of giving like the player a choice to have endings where you can enact some like very liberal or laissez-faire outlook on augmentation, and it just kills the entire vibe of the narrative. And it's why they like discarded it for the next game. I think Deus Ex takes the right approach in just like shutting it off and just like, you've made your choices, think about it.
Yeah.
And to be honest, if I'm gonna leave it there, because if you let me, I will just fucking while out on this game's narrative.
No, you're totally good. Oh yeah, I'll go ahead.
I originally came away from the endings like kind of positive about the fact that they didn't show you much, and then I remembered when I first played Nocturne, SNT Nocturne, and I was like, wait, this is dog shit. I wanted to see what happened. And I actually mulled over for like an hour on why I was more okay with one than the other. And I could not come to a conclusion on it.
Because Deus Ex is a good game.
So true. See, it's funny because like I totally see John's perspective, right? But I think in the moment when I was playing it, I was definitely leaning toward what you said, Kranku, where I like the relative powerlessness that JC feels in the moment. Like, he has 3 really imperfect options. And it's sort of this question of, okay, like, if you're gonna have any kind of if you're gonna assume any kind of ideological viewpoint, like, you gotta start at some point, right? Like, the world's not gonna wait for you to really neatly suss out where you want to land. And the way that sort of hecticness is conveyed, like with this, again, this final sprint through Area 51, as like the turrets are coming at you, the fucking aliens are coming at you. Also, again, I was on the clock, right? I was like, oh god, I gotta finish before 9 p.m. Like, that made it very Ludo.
I think that ties in really nicely with the conspiracy plot, which is I like the way this game makes you think about conspiracy theories as like a concept, because it's like every wild conspiracy that you can think of is true. The Illuminati, the NWO, vaccines, deep state, cabals, soybeans, Area 51, aliens, whatever the fuck. But like you tend to think of like conspiracy theories in this abstract way of like crank magnetism, where it just attracts all the info warriors and the flat earthers and whatever the fuck. But we sort of build this like image of people who want to like simplify the world to one where they're shadow boxing antagonists, and we take the piss out of them for it. Like, a lot of these conspiracies that like Deus Ex draws from are like pretty explicitly anti-Semitic, but like Deus Ex doesn't really go there, obviously. But like it indulges in this very specific fantasy of like Alex Jones police state stuff, where it's like the Illuminati and FEMA concentration camps. But the thing about it is like there's always this like one little tidbit of truth to conspiracies that people have to latch onto before they can go crazy. And you know, it's like, you know, in the 20th century, the power structure of capitalism was run like a cabal of people, and Bob Page is basically trying to, you know, reinvent himself as like J.D. Rockefeller. Like, you know, it's things like the government, U.S. government mass detaining people. It's plausible and it's something they've done before, but you know, I don't even think like Deus Ex has to stretch that far to take like this thing to a conclusion, and I think that's what it sets it apart from like problematic elements of conspiracy theories, that it's just asking you what you would do as a person in this world where paranoia is like the daily grind.
Yeah.
Well, I think the way that it characterizes the Illuminati especially was definitely a bit of a shocker. Because, like, I mean, especially, like, I mean, I think I was born like a year before this game came out. So my whole exposure for the Illuminati is sort of this, like, meme-y sort of version of it that really developed in 2010s and had some, like, had also that crank element to it, blah, 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 blah. But here it's like, it's almost like, it's like dudes coming out of retirement for one last job, right? It's like, you got a bunch of random rich dudes that you're tracking down, and then they're finally going back and sort of thinking like they see this Majestic 12 pop up, and it's like, oh, our proteges have sort of gone off the like on the wrong path, right? Like we need to sort of like put our resources together and fight back. And it's weirdly they humanize in a very strange way. Now it's still they I think there's enough like a little bit of character there that's sort of funny, like the Lucius de Beer whole little tangent where the old head of the Illuminati is in a fucking cryogenic tomb, this like hidden in Emmett, whatever his name is, in his behind his bathroom, and you can go in there and he's like, can you tell him to like turn up the heat a little bit? I'm getting sort of chilly. And you can go back because he's under the impression that he's gonna get like revived at some point and like healed like once tech gets to that point. And you go back to Emmer and he's like, oh yeah, that tech has existed for ages now. I'm never gonna do it. I'm just keeping it around to make him feel better. And so when you go back, he's like, oh, just fucking kill me. You can just turn off his life support. And you get this sort of this tut from Emmer. He's like, you know, I had my reasons for keeping it around. Like, you know, I could you know, I'd stop fucking around with my stuff in the back room. Which is like, on one hand, it's funny, and it sort of does. I think it sort of does paint Emmerich as sort of a like he sort of usurped power on his own in the same way that Bob Page is trying to do during the course of the story. But at the same time, it's like it's never really, you don't get a good sketch of him past that, especially with like the one of the endings is like we were saying earlier, Tracer Tong, your triad scientist, super scientist contact who's also like in contact with the Illuminati. He's sort of like, I think they're up to something, and it just never gets elaborated beyond that. And then when you get to the end of the game, it's like, yeah, we're trying to have the Illuminati sort of retake over the world. It's sort of like it's hard for me to get. I took the New Dark Age ending just because like I think philosophically that's what I'd be more prone to do, and also because it seemed less annoying in the moment gameplay wise. But
that is the thing about conspiratorial thinking, right? Is that like, you know, you always have to have a villain. Either that's Bob Page, or it's the Illuminati, or it's Nancy Pelosi, or it's gay frogs. But like, I think like it's not just navel gazing about like future tech. It's like this really ambitious message about like the state of the world. It wants you to take a bit of a look inward and think about like just how you would, like the human nature of just you being in this place, and it just won't give you an answer. Which is why I'm like super interested to hear the choices that you guys made, of just like what you did with like a bunch of the story stuff.
Yeah, I guess if other people want to say, I had something to respond to that, but if anyone wanted to say what choices,
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, because you set that up so well. I was like, oh, we should all. I did New Dark Age, and then I also did. I went back and I did the Illuminati ending just to see, because yeah, that New Dark Age ending is very like abrupt, right? I was like, oh, I should see what some of the other routes are like. The Illuminati one is a little bit more. it's funny because it basically is like, yep, we set up the new world order, and it's going to take some time to get it all the way rolling, and there's always going to be issues, right? But yeah, we're distributing the vaccine, everything's good for a moment. I was like, oh, okay. And what I was going to say is, I think it's hard for me to take the whole conspiracy thing. It works best when it's like a conspiracy, right? Or in terms of like the sort of implicit part of many real life conspiracies where they're like fake to some extent, or it's like muddled. The fact that Deus Ex sort of just shows you up front what all the conspiracies are, and you're like interacting with the people, it sort of makes it's sort of hard to put them as shadowy figures when there's just like a dude called Bob Page.
Yeah.
That's like hanging around, right? And it's like you don't necessarily know what's going to happen in each of the endings, right? But at the same time, it's like it's hard for me to sort of consider like the ramifications of the Illuminati in like a realistic sense when it's sort of in the game. It's sort of like, yep, this would be like normal world order, and we can get things sort of back on track. Which I don't think like they necessarily agree with ideologically. And the ending quote from Milton, better to reign in hell than serve in heaven, right? I think they want to paint the lens as like, oh, but you're still in the NWO, blah 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 blah. But at the same time, it's like you'd have to have more of an establishment, or like you were saying, like actually sort of show like what it looks like on the ground, like what John was saying. For me to actually like want to see that, right? Because in the reality the game creates, it's like, well, I mean, the world seemed to be running. They sort of painted the world as almost running better with the Illuminati in charge, right? Because on the ground, all I'm seeing is UNATCO and FEMA and the Majestic 12. It's like, well, when all these old guys are in charge, I mean, it seemed to be either the same or slightly better. So it's a little hard for me to get the same sort of sense as like. What exactly is the Illuminati doing that's not just like maintaining world order, right? It's a little bit I don't know. There's I think it's like all of us are talking in sort of vague terms because there's just not a lot there.
Yeah, I guess maybe
I sort of said that in a review as well.
Maybe it's a little too conceptual and not practical enough here. Like it's more in love with the concept than the actual mechanical intricacies of it.
And in the review I said the entire perception of their world is top down. Like they see everything as sort of a great man style history. And it's like I mean, obviously like I'm a Marxist, right? I believe in, class struggle. I believe in the base influencing the superstructure, right? So to me it's like that's such an alien worldview where there's no perception. There's no like economic analysis in this game. There's none of that, and I don't expect there to be, right? But it does make the ideologies that they peddle very one note, and it's very hard to take it seriously because of that. Because there's people on the ground and they have opinions, but at the same time, it's like they don't influence anything, and it makes it pretty clear that most of them are just like, I don't give a shit. Just stop bugging me.
It starts to make more conceptual sense if you like rename the Illuminati to BlackRock and you rename Bob Page to like Sam Bankman-Fried. Or
Yeah.
There's probably also something to be said about how like traditional like game design stuff kind of ends up pointing narratives into that like great man model of history, like so far as like the player interacts with it and stuff. At least that was kind of like thinking about the influence the player has to have on a situation to feel satisfied and stuff like that. If you as this one person can be this outsized and influential, then it kind of it's easy to extrapolate that further to like the politics of everything else.
Yeah, I'll say for myself, Kranku, about your question earlier, like I also, I think I already said I also picked the Dark Age ending. I also thought in the moment, okay, I don't like sort of taking away the option for people to like connect globally, right? I don't like that, but I also again, like Pang said, like I'm against like philosophically the idea that there's like this intangible thing in control, and like the people don't they're not really in touch with it. They're not they don't really have any say in the matter, right? Ideologically, that feels very wrong to me. But like in the moment, it's hard not to sort of be overcome with this, like again, like you imply with the Illuminati, this pragmatic question, almost like, well, is yeah, I guess it even goes back a little to the first Matrix, right? That what the question that whole movie is about. Where it's like, well, is it so bad to be subjugated when you're living a peaceful life? Blah blah blah, right? And that's why I was sort of compelled by the idea of letting Helios take over, even though in the moment you really don't know if you can trust it. Again, the sort of rush of the final level and that awkward sense of, okay, I have to decide really fast. Even if it's overall a little flimsy, that did work for me.
Yeah, I think if in the moment, I think it was executed well.
Yeah,
it really needed, I think, the material beforehand, right? Especially in the couple missions before that, there's nothing. You are you are rolling through bases.
I'm under the water.
Yeah.
I think one of the most significant choices you can make early game is when you're on the plane and you've got
oh yeah,
you got the choice to
Navarre.
make to speak to the NSF leader, but Navarre's trying to kill him. So, like, yeah, I just emptied a mag into her face, but it's like I wonder how many people just like allowed her to kill him and then had to face her later.
It's
If they wanted, like, do you want to hear this terrorist out? Is quite a powerful question.
it's significant because like I know this is a really old adage, right? But like Bioshock Infinite, right? It came up in the Matthew Matos's review that game just doesn't trust you to make sort of those kinds of diegetic decisions, right? The idea that like, and it's sort of it's this Ouroboros because like most games are not responsive enough to your actions, so you're already going at them with the skepticism, like, okay, I mean, it's not like I have no agency in this, so it doesn't matter if I like even try to change anything, right? Like, and that's why maybe that's why it wouldn't occur to many people that they can kill Navarre in that instance. But you can, and it's super cool. And actually, I had another moment today like that, where you're regrouping and you're about to board the helicopter to your next mission, and then you notice this phony mechanic, right? And like, not even just that, you come onto the helipad and you see this dead body in this mechanic get up on the ground, and you see this other mechanic, he's like, oh, I don't know, like I just fixed up your helicopter, like everything's great. And you can actually bring that up to Everett, I think is his name. And then he will tell you, okay, you should take out this mechanic, and then you can bring that up to your helicopter pilot, and then you find you discover, oh, he planted a bomb on the helicopter. And I was really struck by that. I felt like, okay, most games they would I could think of so many examples where, okay, they would expect me to play dumb, right? They would expect me to just go along with it and see through the scripted story that the designers had in mind, right? And they foreshadow it, but I have no way to respond to it. In this game, it's not like that at all. And Pang even let me know, yeah, if you don't go through all that, through the whole sequence of uncovering this phony mechanic, the bomb will actually go off and your pilot will die. Which that honestly really shocked me, and I love this kind of commitments to that philosophy that the game kind of set for itself.
You can even resolve it quicker than that. You don't actually have to talk to Morgan Everett at all. If you just knock the mechanic out and then tell Jock that you did it, he's like, oh wait, shit, there's a bomb.
Yeah,
that's sick.
I think that the one that had the most like impact on me is in the New Dark Age ending. It was like going into the, like when you go there, if you drop by there earlier, I think you need to talk to this one mechanic to get the key code into the Aquanus core. And he's like, these cores are sort of fucked right now. I would not mess with these, and it's really rough that they, the scientists have all been changed over here because there's like this whole splinter cell called X-51 that you've interacted with earlier and all this shit. And when you come back having flushed all the coolant out of the cores, and then you start turning them all on, like in the background you'll hear them go like, sort of do like the canned dialogue is like, "No, what are you doing?" Like shit like that. And I was like, "Oh, haha," it feels a little corny in the moment. I didn't realize quite how integrated it was until he pulled a gun on me and killed me. Like he like him actually coming was like, "Well, fuck this. I'm gonna take this in my own hands. I'm not gonna let you destroy the world, or I'm not gonna let you destroy Area 51, right, and kill us all." And actually trying to kill me is like, oh, that's like such a clever bit of scripting to actually like, at least in that final moment, provide a human touch, like someone whose immediate interests are on the line, like actually trying to do something about it instead of like most of the game where this is mostly just NPCs walking around, right? But I did find that to be very very compelling, and the fact that they if that felt like a continual through line through the entire game, I found very, very well done on their behalf.
Who picked up the kill phrase? Did anyone pick up Gunther's kill phrase?
I think Ryan did.
Yeah,
I remembered to do it because I knew there was a specific choice you had to make, and it was the one where you have to leave the doctor guy at Yanako to spy on them for you, and then he gives you the kill phrase for Gunther, which means you can just skip the boss fight. It's great.
I read that the only person you have to kill in the whole game is Anna Navarro, and you can either kill her on the plane or you fight her when you escape from the UNATCO headquarters. So in that case, you have to, unless you do a glitch, you have to kill her to get the key to leave. Alex Jacobson won't give you the key otherwise. But yeah, apparently I read that like Gunther, especially if you don't have the kill phrase, you can sort of distract him out of the way. And then just run hack the computer. And of course, like we were saying earlier, hacking computers. Yeah. So, and I think Walter Simons, so all the boss fights, because the sniper rifle is so powerful, and because there's a quirk where, because all the bosses will run up to you and have a dialogue sequence with you before you fight, they're all set to friendly. And you can tell this because they have like a green reticle. They won't investigate you if you stealth up on them and shoot them.
Yeah. So
like Anna, like I just stood on the steps, like crouched. I just double tapped her in the head, and after the first shot, she just didn't do anything because she was friendly, right? And same with Gunther. Walter, when you first have to fight Walter Simons in the underwater base, you like he's in a spot where it's not easy to do that. He'll sort of come out from the side when you're walking on this door. So I was like, could I just run past him? And so I did exactly that. I ran past Walter, did not even get the dialogue sequence. And it wasn't until Area 51 where in Area 51 he did come back and I had to kill him. But even in that point, I'm pretty sure I read that you can you don't have to do that, and you can sort of just like go around him completely if you already know the way to get into the control tower and open the blast doors, right? So it's like. Which is nice because those bosses are fucking stupid and bad.
I'll say
not fun.
I exploited the whole dialogue thing to kill Gunther. Sorry, I had to let out the German.
Yeah.
So basically, you go down these stairs, and Gunther is like, he's standing down there, and he comes at you to like talk to you, right? I planted a lamb on top of the stairs, and then I baited him, went upstairs. And then I went a little bit back so that when he came up to me and triggered the dialogue, he would stand right in front of the mine, and it would just go off like a couple seconds after he started talking to me. Like, that was so sick. Oh my god.
So awesome.
Yeah. I think unless anyone has like anything else to say about this game specifically, I would move on to some like ancillary material.
Just the one thing of like, I think John mentioned earlier about like not enjoying Hong Kong as much, but I really did enjoy Hong Kong, and I think one of the best things about it is like it's people think it's a long level. It's actually just like a straight line from picking up the sword to getting things done. but there's so many like little touches that it adds that just makes it a really great area. Like the Maggie Chow giving you that stupid mission to go to the police station that you can just ignore and just like raid her apartment for the sword, or like
No,
you
I
know,
have a story about that.
yeah,
'Cause,
speaking to sorry, Carrie, yeah, you go ahead.
I was just saying because I spoke to her and she gave me that mission, and as I was leaving, somehow I ended up triggering the guards, and it ruined the entire surprise because they came out of the secret passageway, and I was like, "Oh, there's the sword."
I actually got
I
footage
had
of this.
to reload that area a couple times because there were like some sequencing things that went.
I feel like that area is a bit buggy because like I've got footage of this where I put on the thermoptic camo and I go through the lasers and the alarm doesn't trigger, but it will just come out of the fucking rooms like a clown car, and I got 6 guards on my ass immediately. So I'm not sure what's going on with Maggie Chow's apartment in the vanilla version, but like yeah, I mean I think Hong Kong is like one of my favorite parts just because like you actually don't have to interact with the triad bosses at all, but if you do, it has like this lovely little moment where they meet up and they have a truce, and then they have drinks, and then you can even like speak to them. And I like Hong Kong. It's one of my favorite levels.
It is probably the best like integrated level, like the full way through, where everything is like connected and there's no like some of the missions later on, especially a little choppy, right? It would be like, okay, go to this area, and then it teleports you to some new area, and you
Yeah.
sort of like, and then that one, it's really like that level took me a long time. But yeah, like my experience is so different than many others. I never even found the police station. I never met Maggie Chow other than like eavesdropping on her in the secret lab, talking with Bob Page or whoever, until I had to kill her in the UC. There's just so much. It's like all those areas are really well laid out and in such a way that was I know last time I mentioned that it's like not sequence broke, but sort of felt like I was sequence breaking on Mission 2 and Battery Park. And Mission 6 was another one as well, where I just sort of stumbled around and hit some dialogue triggers that I was like sort of not supposed to hit, and then stumbled towards the end line. It's like, yep, that's some fucking gaming. I love that shit.
So one obvious point of comparison for Deus Ex that came up in a couple of our private discussions about it, and obviously because Warren Spector, he actually consulted on this game as well a little bit, I think. Thief, which I'm meaning to play, but I haven't really gotten around to it yet. Hot Pocket, you have like some thoughts on that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like I've only played the first like 4 or so levels of Thief 1. But yeah, I think I played that first, and I think it's really interesting. I need someone to double check me. I don't think Warren Spector was actually really involved in Thief that much. I think he like
Yeah.
left, because Thief had notoriously messy development. Thief 1, where it was going to be like a shooter originally, and then it was kind of only late into development that they like honed in on the idea of like, oh, this is going to be a stealth game, and that is going to drive everything or whatever. So I want the influence there is probably weird. I think I think they're very interesting games to compare in my opinion. I had a dumb haha YouTube title bait tagline I came up with that Thief is the immersive and Deus Ex is the sim.
Hell yeah.
Because I think that kind of the two like are really doing sort of different things. Okay, Raph said in chat, Warren Spector barely worked on Thief, but almost half the Deus Ex team was people from Looking Glass.
Yeah, I just remember him saying like the way he described it. It sounded like he was like consulting on it a little bit, but like it didn't sound like actual nitty gritty kind of work.
Yeah, he was like studio director, or so he was like just the manager guy.
But yeah, Thief is a very interesting comparison because Deus Ex has that type of thing. You all talked about that more in the second session. It has a lot of like different play styles you can do that you're expected to switch between very dynamically based on what research you have and what the situation is or whatever. And Thief is really designed in a lot of the ways in the opposite way, where they just this is a game about stealth and all the mechanics are about stealth. And in that way, it's like, it has some sort of this like immersive sim problem solving, like objects and all that, but it's like with the boxes. I
Yeah.
agree. I mean,
Yeah.
the obvious thing is just that it's the AI is much better in Thief. It's extremely dramatic. That was the thing I noticed because I played Thief 1 and then Deus Ex. The Deus Ex AI is very bad. Is like really bad.
Yeah.
Whereas in Thief they will actually like they will kind of if you're on like the edge of detection, that's way more of a fleshed out AI state where they'll be like, "Oh, where'd you go?" And they'll kind of try to look for you. If they get alerted, they'll like the alert will kind of propagate through the map as the guards run around and alert other guards, and then they'll stay permanently alerted and be more jumpy for like the rest of the level.
Yeah, I think that is really like one of the big weaknesses of Deus Ex's AI, where that whole
The
thing
lighting thing. The lighting is like I think it is a thing in Deus Ex where if you're in dark areas, you're harder to see. But in Thief, it's like an actual mechanic. There's like an on-screen little indicator that says what light level you're in. And like all the maps are designed very explicitly with like that as a mechanic where you're supposed to kind of go between light and shadow and like all that. And it's also made very, it's like because it's an actual explicit thing, it's way less jank than Deus Ex, where Deus Ex is just kind of like, oh, I guess he didn't see me. Yeah.
Oh, Raph is saying, Chad, the size of the item in your hands determines how easy art is easier. That's sick.
Yeah.
So awesome.
And I think, it's like, I don't know. I don't know if anyone else has anything to say on this because I have more, but I have to think how I'm gonna say this precisely.
You're good.
It did remind me of one little funny thing in Deus Ex. Like you can sort of tell when the vision cones are on and off. Like some guards will they'll have a pattern where they're looking one direction and then they do a 180 and start walking the other one. And during the 180, they just don't have the vision cone on. So it's a couple times where I was like, after trying a section a couple times, I figured this out, and I would just be like up on their side, and then they would turn around, just not see me, and then walk the other way. I was like, cool, I'm gonna slip behind you real quick. It's very it's very on and off with that. Definitely not great AI.
Yeah. See, like the item size thing, I think it is an interesting example of, okay, this clearly is some systemic solution to that, right? Where, I mean, there's probably some ray casting or something for the vision cones, and then it's touching the collision of the object in your hands, and then how much of that is occluding your character, that determines how visible you are. Like, that is a very seamless, again, systemic solution to that quote-unquote problem and that mechanic. But yeah, I guess the difference, I guess there is sort of a philosophical yin and yang between Deus Ex and Thief, again, like from my perspective, without having played Thief really, where, like you said, Hot Pocket, Thief, okay, uses a similar kind of mindset or premise, but then to really hone in on a single idea, whereas the whole point of Deus Ex is like to be this hodgepodge, right? And I guess like on a personal level, I'm really intrigued by Thief. I definitely want to play it, and I tend to prefer games that hone in on one thing and do that really well. So I find it really interesting to look at them in that way.
Yeah, I think like even from an artistic standpoint, they're almost trying to do different things. I feel like they're doing similar things, but like sort of with different methods and different angles and different results. Because if someone has that one sort of famous War Inspector interview where it's like you're kind of, it's like, oh, that feeling I got when I got with D&D or whatever, where like, be able to like coming up with solutions on the fly and all that.
Is it the one where he talks about like in one of the Ultimate games, someone got a mouse, like a playtester got a mouse to like slip behind a door and like unlock unlock it from the back or some shit like that. It was like, yeah, I
Yeah.
want to do that in all my games.
Yeah, that's like, yeah, that's the thing. Thief isn't really even to me about that type of thing. It's almost like Deus Ex is trying to kind of have you be clever and like construct this sort of world through that, I guess. And like choices kind of characterizing, you know, it has you make choices and that characterizes how you kind of think about yourself in the world or whatever. Whereas Thief is like it's just all the systems are not necessarily to really make you feel clever, but to just make you feel intensely embodied and feel a really strong atmosphere, and in that way put you in mindset. It's the same sort of like goal of immersion and like getting into your head, but it's done in Thief's method almost reminds me of like prose in like literature or something like that, where it's just getting you. It's just getting you like so, you know, it's just getting you to think from in a certain sort of lens, because I don't know. I'm rambling too much and
No, you're
I'm
good.
not stating it precisely, but like, yeah, I think it's something where it's really, I think, yeah, it's really interesting because it's not really what other game like. Thief is really more like a game like Rain World, honestly, than it is like Deus Ex in a lot of ways to me.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
The Rain World pipeline is like going hard in Beach Gen. It's like, gotta play it, man. Like, you'll see everything differently. It's a great game.
Yeah.
Unironically, like this not even like to be a funny.
Half has some thoughts in chat that are more detailed because I've only played only some of Thief 1, and Thief 2 is designed somewhat differently from what I understand.
Raph says, in a way, Thief is the real pragmatic sim, but like maybe it's only that until you replay it. Think about it.
Can't believe I forgot to mention this. I'm sorry.
Oh god.
The sound in Thief. That's such a massive thing. The sound design in Thief is like insanely central to everything. Where like the surface you're on will, like, if you are walking on like a, on like, I don't know, brick, it'll make louder footsteps that makes you easier to detect versus if you're walking on carpet and things like that. And then you can like, if you like lean into doors, it's easier to hear what's on the other side of the door and things like that. Where where it kind of has a, it has some of that sort of that decision-making aspect, certainly, but it's also, to me, almost a way to just make you feel more embodied and enhance the atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's like that dual purpose that I think Deus Ex more is leaning in the decision-making aspect of that, I think.
Yeah. I remember in our first session, like, we were even talking about, okay, what even is an immersive sim, right? And I'm glad that you brought up Thief in general, because it sort of clarifies that a little bit, that there is more to it than, oh, it's just a simulation, right? Because I remember Kranku in our first session saying that, like, for example, first person is, well, subjectively you could say it is inherently more immersive, right? And once you take that angle, it's okay. Like, it makes you even question, okay, what even does immersive mean, right? You're kind of coming back to the more widely used sort of interpretation of the term immersive, which is like, okay, I actually, like you said, I want to embody this character, or I want to be in this world, right? So the fact that you're, for example, mentioning a sound design, right? That's it really makes you think, okay, there's all these little building blocks to what we may consider an immersive sim that we may not even be super cognizant of.
The sound design is actually really interesting, because you can contrast it with a game that like Metal Gear Solid 2 that basically has no consideration for sound. And it really pops out when you're like cartwheeling behind someone as Raiden, as something that is just not immersive. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yep.
But if you are making an immersive sim based around stealth, then like putting that amount of effort into audio is just like it intuitively makes sense for what you should be doing.
Yeah. And I guess like to maybe take one last look at sort of the evolution of immersive sims. We're gonna look at the evolution of Deus Ex specifically, just very briefly. Obviously we touched a little bit on Invisible War. I think most of y'all agreed that there's not really much there. We're probably never gonna talk about it again, right? On Beach End.
I don't think I knew it existed before like we started this.
I tried. I really tried to play it. Like, I got an hour in, and then there was a couple of bugs that just made it not work, and I just gave up. I also couldn't figure out how to like lower the weapons, to be honest. So like, I just kept equipping binoculars and looking at enemies, just like a fucking goof, and I didn't know how to change the stuff. But yeah.
I'm sorry, that's really cracking me up. The idea of this guy just like mean mugging you super hard.
I will say you can pick a female character in Invisible War, so therefore it's progressive and good.
Also, it's on the Xbox, so
yeah,
so
you know.
clears actually. I guess I'm kind of surprised. Like, it's sort of rare that a game is like so universally derided, and then also it actually like you talk to people 20 years later, it's like, yep, it is that bad. Like, don't play it, don't bother, like, don't worry about it.
I don't know if it's that bad. I think we need to play it a bit more. It came out the fucking same year as like Call of Duty. Come on, it can't be that bad.
Raph and Hot Pocket putting DMC2 in chat. Like that. I had that in my brain when I said that. Like, it was so funny.
I was also thinking about it. It's like the only other example.
Exactly. That tells you that it's very rare. Yeah.
Although I don't, and maybe it's because I'm not in these circles. I don't see the animosity for Dark War that I see for DMC2. I just like nobody talks about this game as far as I'm aware.
Yeah. I guess DMC2 is just too easy of a target. I think Pang. I think you could do something there, right? Like, you could probably save its reputation.
Yeah, I'd have to if I actually played it. I was thinking.
You could not.
I don't really have a bit about it, but I was reading because I read the Deus Ex wiki a lot for this, and I kept stumbling upon pages for Invisible War, and I was just sort of thinking in my head like, I felt bad for the wiki editors who like felt the need to exhaustively document Invisible War just because it has the name Deus Ex on it. This is poor. I should have gone on like the talk pages or whatever and seen them arguing about Invisible War. I bet there's diehards for that game who are just sitting on the fucking fandom wiki or whatever for Deus Ex. But it is funny that they're all sort of like, you have this like these two later Eidos Montreal games, and then fucking Invisible War, and then OG Deus Ex, just all sitting on one wiki because they all have the name Deus Ex on the box. Like, that is very funny to me.
Speaking of, Alan, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think the game is like so forgettable to me that I actively called it the wrong title. Like,
yeah, I mean, I did want to correct you.
I think I thought of the Blaze Blue mobile game.
I guess speaking of Eidos Montreal, Kranku, I think you revisited Human Revolution a little bit for this as well, and you mentioned like not being very into it.
Every time I install Deus Ex Human Revolution, I like it less and less. Like, I think people were very generous to it when it came out, because it came out in the time when
the Dark Ages.
Sims were just their Dark Ages, when Sims were out of favor and everything was a military shooter. People gave it praise back then, and it's fine. Like, it's not a bad game, but it doesn't. When you play Deus Ex 1 and then you go to Human Revolution, you really get a glimpse of what you miss. And like, one of the big things I hate about Human Revolution is like one of the most annoying thing by far is like you just get XP for every action you do rather than just like going into areas or whatever. And I don't think Deus Ex 1 has a great XP reward system, but Deus Ex Human Revolution gives you XP for like hacking stuff. It has nodes within the hacking minigame that has XP. You get XP for knocking people out. You get XP for stunning people, for killing people, and like it encourages like of just like farming XP constantly because you use XP to buy and unlock augments. So like it really railroads you into like this one way of playing, and that one way of playing is stealth because stealth rewards you just insane amount of XP. Like if you get the ghost and the smooth operator bonus for each mission, it's like an extra 1,000 XP on top of everything. And another thing is like vents are far too powerful. Yeah.
John's saying 15 out
There we
of
go.
30 vents.
But like you get XP for walking around in a vent, so you're just encouraged to just vent through everything. And the vents are just like they don't stop. They just keep going and going, and they just lead you towards the end of the level. But like even worse is like conversations, like they all consist of like the single issue of the day, which is just, is augments a good thing? Are augments bad against my religion or whatever? And it really contrasts with like the conversation you have with the bartender in Deus Ex 1, where he talks about like Hong Kong, and like he offers a rebuttal to all your US State Department propaganda, and he talks about the rhetoric surrounding like free enterprise, but like sort of authoritarian premiership tentatively ignored by China or whatever, self-regulation, all this stuff, all these like really high concept ideas, and it makes you feel like there's people living in this world that don't just fucking talk about a single issue all day, which is, I don't really like augments very much, or fucking whatever. So
are you telling me it has JRPG writing?
So that's why I think that it doesn't. It fails in a lot of areas where Deus Ex 1 succeeds, and I think that they were just like, it's just kind of constrained by how much effort they put into making combat and stealth better, which is that's not a bad thing, but like it's really annoying when like you have to. We talked about the hacking earlier and how like you can hack and be invincible. And I like that more than having to go through a fucking mini game every time I hack a door and then hack a computer behind the door, and then I have to capture every node within the hacking mini game because I'm trying to fucking get enough XP to get the leg augment. Like it's a really frustrating way of playing the game. And I got towards one of the missions during the mid game, which was like where the DLC comes in, and I just got so fucking bored of playing this goddamn game that I just like basically tried to skip the DLC as much as I can. Mankind Divided, which I also played a little bit of, is like I think it retcons a lot of it retcons the endings, but it addresses some of those problems. Like in Deus Ex 1, we talked about how the Liberty Island is not a great introductory level. Mankind Divided has a really good introductory level where it's like you're in an abandoned hotel, and it gives you a small tutorial area where you learn all the controls, and then it just gives you two really big open areas with a lot of options to get around, and that's really good. So Mankind Divided makes a lot of small improvements that I think are a good thing, and Human Revolution is dog water, 2 out of 10.
Can I, not related to the Eidos Montreal games, but the Chinese bartender conversation, could I just say, just how I said earlier, that like, it's weird seeing a game like sort of humanize the Illuminati like this one does. It's also crazy to see a game in the pre like Xi Jinping era be like, yeah, China is like a bastion of like free market economics. It's like this actual entrepreneurship in China, and it's not even entirely glib because Denton's like, but y'all are authoritarian. But in the context of the game, it's like, well, yeah, but they're the authoritarian government that's not part of the NWO, so it's good. And it's like, you would never get that shit. Like no writer nowadays would ever put that shit in a game because of like the way people perceive China and its modern superpower era. But it is just so funny, and I love that conversation as well.
I mean, like the bartender is also full of shit, really, because he's like. He's sat there and he's like defending, like, oh yeah, it's a good thing that we're self-regulating with these fucking triad bosses who are just like, it doesn't really make sense. But I just like that, people have got something to talk about other than just like, people don't walk around just talking about a single issue all day, and like, it sort of indicates how like Deus Ex 1 is sort of has these ambitions to be a comprehensive world, and Human Revolutions has ambitions to talk about one specific thing, which is augments, which is not even an interesting thing to talk about, really. Like, it's like saying, "Oh, how would we feel living in a world without like glasses or laptops?" It's like, shut up. No one cares.
It's so
Probably
fucking
could be
true.
interesting to talk about, but I don't know.
Alan says in chat, Human Revolution sounds genuinely like an Atlas game. Do you ever shut up about Atlas? Like, oh my god.
The Nocturne comparison earlier. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Like, also before the call, all we were talking about was Persona 3 Reload.
Being beaten. The allegations are not being beaten.
We need to do an Atlas.
No.
We need to do an Atlas game on Beach Gym, but it's fucking like the Raito games or something.
Oh, hell yes. They're like
Yeah.
perfect Beach Gen Core. Oh my god.
Because I'm not playing a fucking JRPG.
But you know, speaking of the future of Deus Ex, it's great that we're not going to get any more games from now on. So thank you.
See, it's so funny because, like, honestly, I mean, I think I said this to you guys in private, but like at one point I even googled like, are Human Revolution and Mankind Divided even immersive sims? Reddit, because on the surface, I can't pin this to any specific element, but they strike me as just not as simulation heavy as like, and even the first, you know, the simulation, the first Deus Ex was like kind of tenuous, right? But like, I always got the sense they sort of evoke Deus Ex in a more surface level sense.
I don't know. It's there. There's like interaction with stuff. I think the most immersive thing about those games is like it gives you a city block, which is like your social area, and that's a good thing. I like Detroit and Human Revolution. I think it's a pretty cool area, and I like Prague in Mankind Divided. I like just being able to walk around and like intrude on people's houses and steal their beer and stuff. But I think they are immersive sims in whatever tenuous definition we've come up with as immersive sims, but they're definitely more influenced by modern shooter standards.
Yeah. I'll say, yeah, I don't know if I already said this, but like, yeah, I feel like I definitely want to play them eventually, because like Adam Jensen as a character, I don't know, he's just so hype. Like, I definitely asked for this game, you know.
He's hotter than JC for sure.
Yes, exactly. You get it.
That is funny that like I love the little ways that they make fun of JC's appearance throughout the game. It's like talking about like, yeah, his eyes look so fucked up. That's why we had to put sunglasses on him and shit like that. But then it sort of doesn't hit as well because everyone just has the same model as him, so everyone looks like a fucking rescue hero ass, like gigantic neck, Gears of War guy, in a fucking trench coat.
Did you just rescue heroes in 2024?
Yeah, dude. They have that body type. You need to put you put a fucking image of rescue hero.
How close to that? How close to you was that on the cosmic bookshelf? Like, where did?
It's deep in my brain. I watched that shit with my grandma as a little kid. I had the VHSs. But really, it's a Gears comparison, because when I first played Gears, I kept thinking they look like rescue heroes. Because this game it's more like, oh, it's Lay hasn't aged well, right? That thing. And Gears of War, it's actually just like, why did you make them look like this?
My little cousin, who's like maybe 5, did ask me why I was playing Roblox when they saw me playing Deus Ex, which made my day.
Oh my god.
I think that's the perfect note to end on. Thank you for listening to this episode of Beach Gen. Yeah, I don't think we haven't decided on the next big proper game. We definitely, the next two we want to play are Persona 3 Reload for Gaiden and Kururin, the trilogy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Heather was playing it. The Kururin agenda is gonna come down.
I'm
gonna kill
excited
all
to play it.
Garega fans. This is the true 8ing/rising game.
I'm exclusively going to compare it to Castlevania Judgment and
What
Fate
the
Under the Code.
And not Tatsunoko v Capcom? Come on, bro.
Yeah. I'll say, I really enjoyed this. This definitely felt like a very book clubby game. I don't know.
100% agree.
Yeah, I don't know what our next game in that vein will be. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm also, yeah, generally I'm hyped up to like have my little PC or maybe like I was like when I was playing Deus Ex, I was like definitely thinking, okay, I'm like System Shock Enhanced is coming out soon. I'm definitely gonna hop on that. And Thief, we've been talking about it. Hell yeah. Okay. Everyone say goodbye. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Final words. Bye bye.
Thank God we're in Cure in.